You won't believe what happened when a broke single dad showed up to a blind date, only to discover his date was the billionaire CEO who could fire him with one phone call. And that awkward disaster? It changed both their lives forever. Stay until the end to see how this impossible romance survived corporate scandals, family secrets, and the one question she still asks him every Friday night. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Mason Reed's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He gripped the steering wheel of his 7-year-old Honda Civic and stared through the rain-streaked windshield at the glowing entrance of Harlow's Bistro, one of those restaurants where appetizers cost more than his weekly grocery budget. The kind of place where valets wore nicer shoes than he did. The kind of place that made him feel like an imposter just sitting in the parking lot. His phone buzzed against the cup holder. Another text from Derek. "Don't you dare bail on me, man. She's perfect for you. Just go inside." Mason let his head fall back against the headrest and closed his eyes. Perfect. Right. He'd heard that word before. His ex-wife had seemed perfect too, right up until the day she decided motherhood wasn't the adventure she'd signed up for and walked out on him and their 6-month-old son without looking back. That was 6 years ago. 6 years of sippy cups and parent-teacher conferences and falling asleep on the couch during animated movies. 6 years of learning to braid hair from YouTube tutorials and burning dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and explaining why mommy wasn't coming back, not ever, no matter how many times his son asked. 6 years of being enough for Charlie, but never quite enough for anyone else. The last blind date Derek had arranged ended with the woman checking her phone every 4 minutes before faking a family emergency. The one before that made it through appetizers before mentioning she wasn't really looking for a guy with baggage. As if Charlie was luggage, Mason should have checked at the door instead of the entire reason his heart still beat. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 7:51 p.m. She was probably already inside, whoever she was. Derek had been annoyingly secretive about details, which should have been Mason's first warning sign. All he knew was her name, Vanessa, and that she worked in the same office complex as Derek's girlfriend. Just be yourself, Derek had said, like that had ever worked out well for anyone. Mason reached for his keys, ready to start the engine and disappear into Friday night traffic. He'd text Derek some excuse about Charlie getting sick. Derek would be pissed, but he'd get over it. Everyone always did. His fingers touched the ignition. Then his phone lit up with a photo of Charlie grinning gap-toothed at the camera, giving an enthusiastic thumbs up. The picture was from this morning, when Mason had dropped him off at Derek's place for the overnight stay. Charlie had been so excited about his boys' night with Uncle Derek that he'd packed his own bag, stuffing it with 3 different dinosaur toys and exactly 1 clean sock. "You should go on your date, Dad," Charlie had said with the kind of serious expression that only 6-year-olds could pull off. "Maybe you'll meet someone nice, someone who likes dinosaurs." Mason's chest tightened. He wasn't doing this for himself. He'd convinced himself he was fine alone. But Charlie deserved to see his dad try. Deserved to grow up watching someone take chances instead of hiding in parking lots, paralyzed by the fear of not being good enough. 1 hour, Mason muttered to himself. You can survive 1 hour. He killed the engine, pocketed his keys, and stepped out into the February cold before he could talk himself out of it again. The walk from his car to the restaurant entrance felt like crossing a battlefield. His navy blazer, the one he wore to parent-teacher conferences and funerals, suddenly felt too tight across the shoulders. He'd shaved twice and still managed to nick himself under his jaw. The cut had stopped bleeding an hour ago, but he could still feel it there, a tiny reminder that he had no idea what he was doing. The valet barely glanced at him as he pulled open the heavy glass door. Warm air and soft jazz music washed over him, along with the scent of expensive wine and something that smelled like rosemary. The interior was exactly as intimidating as he'd feared. White tablecloths, crystal glasses catching candlelight, couples leaning close and laughing like they'd never known what it felt like to eat cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row. A hostess appeared at his elbow, all sleek black dress and professional smile. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" Yeah. Maybe. I'm meeting someone. Vanessa?" His voice cracked slightly on her name, and he wanted to sink through the floor. "Party of 2, probably under her name, or maybe mine. Reed, Mason Reed. 1 moment, please." The hostess consulted her tablet with the kind of focus people usually reserved for surgery. "Ah, yes. Your party hasn't arrived yet. Would you like to wait at the bar, or shall I seat you?" Relief and disappointment crashed into each other in his chest. She wasn't here yet, which meant he could still leave. Could walk right back out that door and, actually, I'll just... The door behind him swung open with enough force to send cold air rushing past his shoulders. "I'm so sorry I'm late!" The voice was breathless, feminine, urgent. Mason turned and forgot how to form words. The woman stumbling through the doorway looked like she'd just survived a natural disaster. Her dark hair had escaped whatever elegant style it had started the evening in and now hung in damp waves around her face. Her coat, expensive looking even to Mason's untrained eye, was buttoned wrong. One of her high heels had a scuff across the toe. She was breathing hard, her cheeks flushed pink from cold or running or both. She was also, without question, the most beautiful person Mason had ever seen in real life. "My phone died," she continued, speaking to the hostess, but her eyes already scanning the restaurant. "And I got completely turned around because the GPS cut out on Michigan Avenue, and I've been walking in circles for..." Her gaze landed on Mason. Everything stopped. Later, he wouldn't be able to explain what happened in that moment. It wasn't love at first sight, wasn't some romantic movie nonsense about destiny or fate. It was something quieter and infinitely more terrifying. Recognition. Like his nervous system had been waiting his entire life to meet hers, and now that it had, there was no going back to not knowing what her eyes looked like when they went wide with surprise. "Mason?" she said, which was impossible, because he'd never seen this woman before in his life. Yes?" He sounded like an idiot. Have we met?" Something flickered across her face too quickly for him to read. The hostess looked between them with barely concealed amusement. "I'll show you to your table," she said. Mason's brain was still trying to catch up. This was Vanessa? This woman who looked like she belonged on magazine covers, who was currently attempting to smooth her hair with trembling fingers, who knew his name even though Derek had definitely, absolutely, 100% said this was a blind date. He followed numbly as the hostess led them through the restaurant to a corner booth. Vanessa slid in across from him, shrugging out of her coat to reveal a deep green dress that probably cost more than his car payment. She was still breathing hard. "I'm sorry," she said again. I didn't mean to make such a dramatic entrance. Are you okay?" The question came out before Mason could stop it. "You look like you just ran a marathon. Only about 6 blocks. She laughed, and the sound was nothing like he'd expected. Not polished or perfect, but genuine, a little shaky around the edges. In heels, which I do not recommend. A waiter materialized beside their table with water glasses and menus. Mason accepted both mechanically, still trying to process what was happening. Across from him, Vanessa took a long drink of water, and he watched her hand shake slightly as she set the glass down. She was nervous. Somehow that made everything worse and better at the same time. "So," Mason said, because someone had to say something. "Derek told you about me?" "He mentioned you, yes." Vanessa's fingers fidgeted with the edge of her napkin. "He said you were, well, he said a lot of things, actually. He talks a lot, doesn't he? Your friend Derek." "That's one word for it." "He cares about you, though. That's obvious." Mason nodded slowly, watching her face. "He didn't mention what you do. For work, I mean." "Oh." Another flicker of something across her expression. "I work in tech. Software development, corporate strategy, that kind of thing. It's boring, honestly. What about you?" "Data analysis, financial sector. Also boring." "I doubt that." "You'd lose that bet pretty quickly." He meant it as a joke, but it came out flatter than intended. 6 years of parent-teacher conferences had not improved his small talk skills. "Sorry, I haven't done this in a while." "Done what?" "This. Dinner. Dates." He gestured vaguely at the restaurant around them. "Any of it, really." Vanessa's expression softened. "How long?" 6 years. That's a long time. "Yeah, well," Mason picked up his menu just to have something to do with his hands. "I've been busy. I have a son, Charlie. He's 6. He waited for it. The subtle shift in her expression, the polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the careful redirect toward something less complicated than single parenthood. It's what usually happened, what always happened, eventually. But Vanessa just nodded. "Derek mentioned, he said Charlie loves dinosaurs."
Mason's grip on the menu loosened. He told you about Charlie. Of course he did. Why wouldn't he?
Most people... He stopped, reconsidered. Never mind. Yeah, dinosaurs. Specifically pterodactyls right now, which he'll tell you aren't technically dinosaurs, but flying reptiles. And if you get it wrong, he will correct you with sources. Vanessa's smile was genuine this time. He sounds brilliant. He's definitely smarter than me. I doubt that too. There was something in the way she said it, direct, certain, like she actually meant it, that made Mason look up from his menu. She was watching him with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but wasn't, like she was actually interested in what he had to say instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. You still haven't explained how you know my name, he said. Derek told me this was a blind date. Color rose in her cheeks. It is. I mean, technically. Technically? She closed her menu and met his eyes directly. We work in the same building. Mason blinked. What? The Hartley Tower. Downtown. I've seen you in the elevator. A few times, actually. You usually get on at the 14th floor around 8:30 in the morning with a coffee from that place across the street, the one with the blue awning. You always hold the door for people even when you're clearly running late. The words landed like physical things. Mason's entire understanding of the evening tilted sideways. You... what? I know how that sounds. Vanessa spoke quickly now, the words tumbling over each other. I swear I'm not some kind of stalker. You smiled at me once when the elevator was packed and someone stepped on your foot. And you didn't even flinch, just smiled like it was fine. And I thought... She stopped herself. This is coming out all wrong. No, Mason shook his head, trying to catch up. Wait, when did Derek set this up? 2 weeks ago. And you already knew who I was? Yes. So this whole blind date thing was blind for you, not for me. Vanessa pressed her lips together. I should have said something right away. I'm sorry, When Derek mentioned he wanted to set up his friend Mason with someone, and I realized it was you, I thought maybe... She exhaled hard. I'm making this worse, aren't I? Mason sat back against the booth. His coffee order, the elevator. She'd noticed him. Had actually paid attention while he was just trying to get through another morning without spilling caffeine on his tie. Why? He asked. Why what? Why did you say yes? If you already knew who I was, you could have just, I don't know, said something in the elevator, at the coffee place, anywhere. Why go through all this? Vanessa's fingers twisted the napkin in her lap. Because I'm a coward. That doesn't seem likely. You don't know me. No, Mason agreed, but you ran 6 blocks in heels to get here. That doesn't sound like something a coward does. She laughed again, but this time it sounded fragile. You'd be surprised what terrifies me. Before Mason could figure out how to respond to that, the waiter returned to take their orders. Mason hadn't looked at the menu properly, just pointed at something that seemed middle range in price and hoped it wasn't too weird. Vanessa ordered without looking at the menu at all, which suggested she'd been here before, often enough to have favorites. When the waiter left, an awkward silence settled over the table. So, Vanessa said, Derek tells me you're good at your job. Derek tells everyone I'm good at everything because he's contractually obligated to be nice to me. Are you? Good at your job? Mason shrugged. I'm competent. I show up on time. I don't make obvious mistakes. That's about it. That's more than most people manage. You sound like you'd know. I manage a lot of people who can't manage those 3 basic things, so yes, I'd know. There was something in her voice, a weariness that felt familiar. Mason studied her face, taking in details he'd missed in the chaos of her arrival. The slight shadows under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders even now, sitting down, the way she held herself like someone used to being watched. What do you really do? He asked quietly. Because I'm getting the feeling software development isn't the whole story. Vanessa's expression shuddered immediately. What makes you say that? The way you said it. Like you were reading from a script you'd practiced. For a long moment she didn't respond, just sat there turning her water glass in slow circles, watching the candlelight reflect off the ice cubes. When she finally spoke, her voice was careful. If I tell you the truth, you're going to look at me differently. Probably. Mason admitted. But I'm already confused, so how much worse could it get? She almost smiled at that. I'm a CEO. Okay. Of a tech company, a large one. You've probably heard of it. Probably not. I mostly know the names of dinosaurs and characters from kids' shows these days. Hale Innovations. The name meant nothing to Mason for about 3 seconds. Then his brain caught up with what his ears were hearing, and everything clicked into place with nauseating clarity. Hale Innovations, the company that had made headlines last year for its AI development breakthroughs. The company whose stock price he'd tracked for a client portfolio just last month. The company worth approximately $8 billion, and its CEO was named Vanessa Hale. Oh, Mason said faintly. That's okay. That's worse. I told you. You're a billionaire. Technically, the company is worth billions. My personal net worth is... She stopped. That's not helpful, is it? Mason's mind was racing, trying to reconcile the woman sitting across from him, with her messed up hair and scuffed shoes and nervous hands, with the polished executive he'd seen in business articles. Vanessa Hale, one of the youngest female billionaires in the country, featured in Forbes and Fortune and probably a dozen other publications he'd never read, and she'd been watching him in elevators. I need a minute, he said. Of course. He stood up, mumbled something about the restroom, and somehow made it across the restaurant without walking into anything. The bathroom was blessedly empty. Mason gripped the edge of the sink and stared at his reflection in the mirror. A billionaire. Derek had set him up with an actual billionaire and didn't think that was worth mentioning? His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, already knowing what he'd find. How's it going? Mason typed back with shaking fingers. You set me up with Vanessa Hale. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, yeah man, she's great, right? She's a billionaire, Derek. So? Are you insane? Dude, she's cool. Just talk to her like a normal person. There is nothing normal about this situation. You still there? Mason looked at himself in the mirror. He could leave. Could walk right back out to that table. Make some excuse about Charlie, or work, or a sudden illness, and disappear into the night. Vanessa would understand. She'd probably expected it, honestly. What was one more disappointed rejection in a life that clearly had no shortage of options? But then he thought about Charlie's gap-toothed smile, about the promise he'd made to himself in the parking lot, about trying, and he thought about the way Vanessa's hands had shaken when she picked up her water glass. Yeah, he typed back. I'm still here. He washed his hands, straightened his collar, and walked back to the table before his courage could desert him. Vanessa looked up when he approached, and for a second he saw real fear in her eyes, like she was bracing herself for him to grab his coat and run. Instead, Mason slid back into the booth. Sorry, he said. That was rude. It was a lot of information. You could have led with it. Would you have stayed? Mason considered lying, then decided against it. Probably not. That's why I didn't tell you. Fair enough. He picked up his water glass just to have something to do. Derek's terrible at this. At what? Setting people up. This is the 3rd time he's tried. The first woman spent the whole dinner talking about her ex. The second one asked if I could get a babysitter more often because kids weren't really her scene. That's awful. It's honest. Mason shrugged. Most people don't want complicated. Can't blame them. Charlie's not complicated. He's your son. Tell that to everyone who's decided he's a deal breaker before even meeting him. Vanessa's expression hardened. Then they're idiots. Or realistic. Don't do that. Do what? Sell yourself short before anyone else gets the chance. She leaned forward slightly. You're a single parent who works full-time and still shows up to blind dates because your friend believes you deserve something good. That's not complicated. That's impressive. Mason didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to do with the way she was looking at him, direct and unflinching and nothing like pity. Their appetizers arrived. Some kind of fancy bruschetta that Mason was absolutely certain he'd mispronounce if forced to order it out loud. They ate in silence for a minute, the initial tension easing into something almost comfortable. Can I ask you something? Mason said. Sure. Why did you really agree to this? And don't say because Derek's persuasive. I've known him for 15 years. He's about as persuasive as a golden retriever. Vanessa set down her fork. Do you want the honest answer?
Always. Because I'm lonely.
The words came out simple, direct, devastating. Because I'm 34 years old and I've built an entire empire, and I go home every night to an empty apartment where the silence is so loud I can't stand it. Because every person I meet either wants something from me or is intimidated by me, and I can't remember the last time someone just... She stopped, shook her head. Sorry, that was too much. No, Mason said quietly. It wasn't. I saw you in that elevator and you smiled at me like I was just another person. Not Vanessa Hale, CEO. Not the youngest woman on some stupid Forbes list. Just me. And I thought maybe if I could meet you somewhere neutral, somewhere you didn't know who I was, maybe we could just talk. Like normal people. Except you ran 6 blocks to make sure you didn't stand me up. I wasn't going to let you think I didn't show up. That would have been cruel. Mason felt something shift in his chest. Some defensive wall he'd been building for 6 years developing its first crack. You know this is insane, right? He said. You could date anyone. Literal movie stars. Other billionaires. People who own islands. I don't want people who own islands. What do you want? Vanessa met his eyes. Honestly, I don't know anymore. But I know what I don't want. I don't want someone who sees dollar signs when they look at me. I don't want someone who thinks my job is more interesting than I am. I don't want to spend another Friday night at another networking event pretending to care about stocks and acquisitions while everyone pretends to care about me. That sounds exhausting. It is. She picked up her fork again, turning it over in her fingers. What about you? What do you want? Right now? I want to not mess up this dinner. You're doing fine. I'm really not. I had a minor panic attack in the bathroom. I saw you leave. I assumed you were escaping. I considered it. What stopped you? Mason thought about Charlie, about promises, about the woman sitting across from him who ran through freezing streets in broken heels because she didn't want to be cruel. You did, he said. Their entrees arrived. Mason had ordered some kind of chicken dish that turned out to be excellent, though he barely tasted it. He was too busy watching Vanessa talk about her work, not the CEO parts, but the actual work, the coding she missed doing, the projects that excited her, the frustration of managing boards who cared more about quarterly earnings than innovation. She asked about Charlie, and Mason found himself telling stories he usually kept close. About the time Charlie had insisted on wearing his dinosaur costume to the grocery store and corrected the cashier's pterodactyl facts. About the phase where he'd only eat foods that were green because he'd decided he was an herbivore. About the night Charlie had asked if Mommy left because he'd been bad, and Mason had held him and promised that none of this was his fault, would never be his fault. He sounds wonderful, Vanessa said softly. He is. He's everything. Does he know you're here tonight? He helped me pick out my shirt. Mason glanced down at his navy button-up. He said blue was my color. I'm not convinced he's right, but I trusted him anyway. He's right. The words were simple, but the way she said them made Mason's face warm. He focused very hard on his chicken. Can I be honest about something? Vanessa asked. Please. I'm terrified right now. Mason looked up. Of what? That this is going well. That I actually like you. That when this dinner ends, I'm going to want to see you again. And you're going to realize dating me is impossibly complicated and... Vanessa. She stopped. I'm a single dad who drives a 7-year-old Civic and lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. My idea of a fancy dinner is takeout that didn't come through a drive-through window. My son wakes me up at 6 a.m. every Saturday to watch dinosaur documentaries. I have no idea what I'm doing in this restaurant or in this conversation or in general, honestly. He set down his fork. If you're looking for complicated, you found it, but not for the reasons you're worried about. I don't care about any of that. You say that now. I mean it now. They looked at each other across the table. Mason's heart was doing something strange in his chest, beating too fast and too slow at the same time. This is a bad idea, he said. Probably. Your life is nothing like mine. True. The media would have a field day. Definitely. So why are we still sitting here? Vanessa's smile was small and real. Because neither of us wants to leave. She wasn't wrong. They stayed through dessert, some chocolate thing that Mason was pretty sure cost more than his monthly Netflix subscription, and then coffee, and then just talking long after their table should have been cleared. The restaurant began to empty around them. The waiter stopped hovering. The candle on their table burned down to a nub. Finally, reluctantly, they asked for the check. Mason reached for his wallet. Vanessa put her hand over his. "Please don't," she said. "I can pay for dinner." "I know you can, but this place is—" She gestured around them. "It was my choice. Let me." "That doesn't feel right." "Why not?" "Because—" He struggled for words. "Because I asked you here. Sort of. Derek asked you here on my behalf. It's supposed to be my responsibility." "Says who? Society? Convention? I don't know, basic dating rules?" "I don't like those rules." Vanessa pulled out a black credit card that probably had no limit. "New rule. Whoever chooses the restaurant pays. Fair?" It wasn't fair, not even close, but arguing felt like it would insult something Mason couldn't quite name. So he nodded. Outside, the February cold hit them like a wall. Mason's breath fogged in the air. Beside him, Vanessa wrapped her coat tighter, and he noticed for the first time that it wasn't actually that heavy. Fashion over function, probably. "Where are you parked?" he asked. "I took a car service. It dropped me off about 6 blocks from here before my phone died, and I got lost. I'll walk you to— Wait, you don't have your phone." "I'll manage. It's freezing. I've survived worse." Mason didn't think, just acted. "Let me drive you home." Vanessa looked at him. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I'm going to anyway." "Why?" "Because you ran 6 blocks in heels to get here. Least I can do is make sure you don't have to walk 6 blocks back." For a moment he thought she might argue, then she nodded. His Civic was exactly where he'd left it, looking even more out of place now among the luxury cars surrounding it. Mason unlocked the passenger door. The automatic locks had stopped working 2 years ago, and cleared Charlie's booster seat from the front. A dinosaur coloring book fell onto the floor. He grabbed it quickly, heat rising in his face. "Sorry, usually I'd have cleaned up, but—" "It's fine." Vanessa slid into the seat, apparently unbothered by the Cheerios wedged in the cup holder or the action figure under her feet. "Where to?" She gave him an address in the Gold Coast that made his stomach drop. Of course she lived in the Gold Coast, probably in one of those buildings with doormen and rooftop pools and views that cost more per month than he made in a year. The drive took 15 minutes through late-night Chicago streets. They didn't talk much. Mason focused on driving, hyper-aware of every noise the Civic made. The slight rattle in the engine, the way the heat only worked on the passenger side, the dinosaur stickers Charlie had plastered across the dashboard. When they pulled up outside her building, yes, there was a doorman, Mason put the car in park and turned to face her. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "I should be thanking you." "For what? Panicking in the bathroom?" "For staying." Vanessa's hand was on the door handle, but she wasn't opening it. "For giving me a chance when you didn't have to." "You ran 6 blocks." "You keep saying that." "Because it matters." "Why?" "Because—" Mason stopped, tried to find the right words. "Because most people wouldn't have. Because it means you cared enough to show up even though you didn't have to. Even though you could have just sent a text or an apology or nothing at all." "I told you I was lonely," Vanessa said quietly. "I wasn't exaggerating. Neither was I. About it being a long time. 6 years. Yeah. That's brave." "It's really not." "It is." She turned in her seat to face him fully. "Putting yourself out there after someone hurt you that badly, trying again even when you have every reason not to, that's the definition of brave." Mason's throat felt tight. "I almost didn't come tonight." "I know." "How could you know?" "Because I almost didn't either." Vanessa smiled. "We're both a mess, apparently." "Apparently." They sat there in the warm car while the engine ticked and the doorman pretended not to watch from behind his glass door. Mason knew he should say goodbye, should let her go back to her world while he returned to his. This had been nice, but it couldn't be anything more than nice because their lives didn't fit together, couldn't possibly fit together. "Can I see you again?" The words came out before his brain approved them. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. "Really? If you want." "When?" "I have Charlie this weekend, but maybe next Friday? Somewhere less—" He gestured at the building looming above them. "Expensive?" "I'd like that." "Yeah?" "Yeah."
Mason felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Hope, maybe, or terror, possibly both. "I'll text you," he said, "once I get your number." "Right," Vanessa laughed and pulled out her dead phone. "That would help." He handed her his phone, watched her type in her contact information with steady fingers. When she handed it back, he saw she'd saved herself as just Vanessa. Not Vanessa Hale, not Vanessa from Hale Innovations, just her name. "Good night, Mason." "Good night." She opened the door, letting in a rush of cold air. Then she paused. "Hey." "Yeah? For what it's worth?" Vanessa met his eyes. Charlie was right. Blue is definitely your color. She closed the door before he could respond, before he could process the warmth spreading through his chest. He watched her walk to the building entrance, exchange words with the doorman, disappear through the glass doors into a world of marble lobbies and private elevators. Mason sat in his Civic for a long moment, staring at her name on his phone screen. Then he drove home through empty streets, past closed storefronts and late-night diners, back to his ordinary apartment in his ordinary neighborhood where his extraordinary son was spending the night with Derek. His phone rang when he was halfway home. Derek's name flashed on the screen. Mason answered. "Hey." "Dude!" Derek sounded way too awake for almost midnight. "How did it go? Tell me everything. Did you like her? Did she like you? Are you seeing her again?" "Derek, Charlie's been asking about it all night. He wants to know if you found someone who likes dinosaurs." Despite everything, Mason smiled. "Tell him I'm working on it." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight." "Come on, man." "I'll talk to you tomorrow." "You're seeing her again, aren't you? I can hear it in your voice." "Good night, Derek." "I knew it. I'm the best wingman ever. You're welcome." Mason hung up before Derek could say anything else ridiculous. But his friend wasn't wrong about any of it. When he got home, the apartment felt too quiet. He stood in Charlie's doorway looking at the empty bed, the dinosaur posters on the walls, the action figures arranged in careful battle formations across the floor. He'd almost skipped tonight, almost convinced himself it was easier to stay home, stay safe, stay behind the walls he'd built over 6 years of learning not to hope for too much. But Vanessa had run 6 blocks in broken heels, and Mason had stayed. Mason pulled out his phone and opened their text thread. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before he typed. "Made it home. Thanks again for tonight." The response came back almost immediately. "Thank you for everything." Then a few seconds later, "I mean it. I had a really good time." Mason smiled at his phone like a teenager. "Me too," he typed back. "See you next Friday." It's a date. He went to bed that night with his phone on the nightstand, Charlie's dinosaur nightlight casting plastic shadows across the ceiling, and the strange, terrifying feeling that his carefully controlled life had just become beautifully complicated. The second date happened at a diner called Mel's that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1987. Mason had chosen it deliberately, wanting somewhere that felt like his world instead of hers. Somewhere with sticky menus and coffee that came in heavy ceramic mugs and waitresses who called everyone hun without irony. He arrived 15 minutes early, which gave him plenty of time to second-guess everything. The booth he'd chosen was right by the window, which now seemed too visible. What if someone recognized her? What if she took one look at the peeling vinyl seats and cracked linoleum floor and realized what a massive mistake she was making? His phone buzzed. "Running 5 minutes late. Traffic on Lake Shore is insane," Mason typed back. "No problem. Take your time." Then immediately wondered if that sounded too casual, too eager. Should he have added an emoji? Did billionaire CEOs use emojis? Was he overthinking this? Definitely overthinking this. He ordered coffee he didn't want just to give his hand something to do. The waitress, her name tag said Donna, filled his mug without asking and left a handful of creamers on the table. Through the window, Mason watched cars crawl past, brake lights reflecting red on wet pavement. It had rained earlier, one of those cold March storms that couldn't decide if it wanted to be snow. A sleek black car pulled up outside. Mason's stomach dropped. Then Vanessa stepped out, and his stomach did something else entirely. She was wearing jeans. Actual jeans, dark and probably expensive, but still jeans. A cream-colored sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail.
She looked nothing like the polished CEO from the business articles and everything like someone he might actually know. The driver said something to her through the window. Vanessa shook her head, waved him off. The car pulled away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, looking up at the diner's neon sign with an expression Mason couldn't quite read. He stood up without meaning to. She saw him through the window, and her face broke into a smile that hit him somewhere around his solar plexus. Then she was pushing through the door, bringing cold air and the scent of rain with her.
"Hi," she said, slightly breathless. "Hi yourself. This place is perfect." "Really?" Mason glanced around at the faded decor, suddenly seeing it through her eyes. "It's kind of a dump." "It's real." Vanessa slid into the booth across from him, shrugging out of her jacket. "I'm so tired of places that are trying too hard to be impressive." Donna materialized with another mug. "Coffee, sweetheart?" "Please." Vanessa wrapped her hands around the cup when it arrived, like she needed the warmth. "Thank you." "You two need a minute with the menu, or you know what you want." Mason looked at Vanessa. She looked back at him. "I have no idea what's good here," she admitted. "The pancakes are solid," Mason said. "Breakfast all day. Grilled cheese is also a safe bet." "I'll have the pancakes." Vanessa handed back her menu. "And bacon. Extra crispy if possible."
"Same," Mason said, because apparently he'd forgotten how to make independent decisions. When Donna left, Vanessa leaned back against the booth and just looked at him, really looked, like she was trying to figure something out. "What?" Mason asked. "I wasn't sure you'd actually want to see me again." "Why not?" "Because you had a week to think about how insane this is, dating someone whose net worth you could probably Google." "I didn't Google you." Her eyebrows went up. "Really?" "Really?" Mason paused. "Derek did, though. Sent me about 15 articles I didn't read." "Why didn't you read them?" "Because they're not you. They're what people think about you, which isn't the same thing." Vanessa's expression softened. "That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in months." "Your bar is set dangerously low." "You have no idea." Their food arrived faster than expected. Vanessa cut into her pancakes with the focus of someone who took breakfast very seriously. Mason watched her take the first bite, saw her eyes close briefly. "Okay, these are actually incredible," she said. "Told you." "How did you find this place?" "Charlie and I come here sometimes on Saturday mornings. When he was younger, he'd only eat pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, so Donna, our waitress, started cutting them into shapes for him. He still asks for it sometimes, even though he's probably too old for it now." "That's not something you age out of." Vanessa smiled. "My dad used to cut my sandwiches into triangles because I was convinced they tasted better that way. I was 16 before I admitted squares were fine too. It was the first time she'd mentioned family." Mason filed that away, didn't push. "So," he said, "how was your week?" "Terrible. 3 board meetings, a product launch that almost imploded, and a lawsuit I can't talk about." She stabbed a piece of bacon. "Yours?" "Charlie's school called because he corrected his teacher about the Mesozoic era and wouldn't let it go. I had to have a very serious conversation about being respectful, even when you're technically right. Then he asked if being smart was a bad thing, and I had to backtrack hard." "That's heartbreaking." "Yeah, well, being the smartest kid in class doesn't always make you the most popular." Mason took a drink of coffee. "I'm trying to teach him that facts and kindness can coexist, but it's a work in progress. He's 6. He'll figure it out." "I hope so. I don't want him to—" Mason stopped himself. "What?" "Nothing." "Not nothing." Mason set down his fork. "I don't want him to learn to make himself smaller to make other people comfortable, but I also don't want him to be lonely, and I don't know how to give him both." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure. I was that kid. The one who knew too much and talked too much and didn't understand why everyone else didn't care about the things I cared about." She picked at her napkin. "My parents kept moving me up grades because I was bored. By the time I was 14, I was in college classes with 18-year-olds who thought I was annoying. I had exactly 0 friends." "That sounds lonely." "It was. Still is sometimes." She met his eyes. "But I'd rather be lonely and honest than popular and pretending to be someone I'm not. Charlie will figure that out too. You're already teaching him the right things." "How do you know?" "Because he's still correcting his teacher.
You haven't broken that part of him yet. The yet hung in the air between them. I won't, Mason said quietly. I know. That's why I'm here.
They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Mason noticed Vanessa had put her phone face down on the table and hadn't checked it once.
That felt significant somehow, though he wasn't sure why. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. Last week at Harlow's, you said every person you meet either wants something from you or is intimidated by you. I did say that, yes. Which one am I? Vanessa looked up from her pancakes. Neither. That's the problem. How is that a problem?
Because I don't know how to do this. She gestured between them. Normal. I haven't been normal in so long I've forgotten what it looks like.
You seem pretty normal to me right now.
I'm faking it.
So am I.
She laughed at that, genuine and surprised. Are we both just pretending we know what we're doing?
Completely.
Okay, good. I feel better. Mason's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, Derek sending a gif of someone giving a thumbs up, and silenced it.
You can check that, Vanessa said. It's just Derek being obnoxious. Is Charlie with him again?
No, he's with his friend Ethan's family this weekend. They have a trampoline and a dog, so I'm officially the boring option now.
Does that bother you?
That he's having fun without me?
No, that's what I want for him. Mason pushed his empty plate aside.
But yeah, sometimes it's weird. The apartment gets too quiet.
I know that quiet. Your whole building probably gets that quiet.
My whole life gets that quiet.
Vanessa's voice was matter-of-fact, not looking for sympathy. I have a penthouse with 14 rooms. Most days I use exactly 3 of them. The rest just sit there reminding me that square footage doesn't equal company. Why not get a smaller place? Because Vanessa Hale, CEO, lives in a penthouse. It's expected, part of the image. Screw the image, she smiled. Easy for you to say. Is it, though? I'm a single dad driving a car that makes concerning noises. I live in a building where the elevator breaks twice a month. My life is the opposite of impressive. But it's yours. You own it. You're not performing for anyone. Neither should you. That's not how my world works. Maybe your world is wrong. Vanessa stared at him. You really believe that? I really do. You barely know me. I know you ran 6 blocks in heels. I know you eat pancakes like they might disappear if you're not careful. I know you remember your dad cutting sandwiches into triangles. Mason leaned forward. I know the woman sitting across from me right now is more real than whatever version you show boardrooms. How can you possibly know that?
Because you're here. In a diner that smells like grease and coffee instead of some 5-star restaurant. Because you asked about Charlie like he actually matters, instead of just being polite. Because... He stopped, reconsidered. Because you seem relieved you don't have to pretend right now. Vanessa's eyes were bright.
I am. Relieved, I mean. So stop apologizing for it. I wasn't apologizing. You've said sorry 4 times since you sat down. I have not... She stopped. Okay, maybe I have. Old habit. Break it. Just like that? Why not? Because some habits don't break easily. Mason thought about 6 years of single parenthood. 6 years of learning to ask for help and failing at it more often than not. 6 years of apologizing for Charlie's existence to people who didn't deserve the apology. Yeah, he said. I get that. Donna came by with the check. Mason grabbed it before Vanessa could, which earned him a look.
We agreed whoever picks the place pays, he said. That was last time.
It's my rule now. I'm keeping it.
That's not how rules work. It is when I'm the one paying. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Fine, but next time is on me.
Next time?
There's going to be a next time, right? Mason's heart did that stupid fluttering thing again. Yeah, if you want. I want. He left cash on the table, enough to cover the meal plus a generous tip because Donna had given them refills without hovering, and they walked out into the damp March evening. The temperature had dropped while they were inside. Vanessa pulled her jacket tighter. Where'd your driver go? Mason asked. I told him I'd call when I needed pickup. So call. I don't want to yet. They stood on the sidewalk outside the diner, neither quite ready to leave. A bus rumbled past, spraying dirty water onto the curb. Someone's car alarm went off down the block. It was nothing like the romantic movie moments Mason had grown up watching, but somehow that made it better. "Walk with me?" Vanessa said. "Where?" "Nowhere. Just walk." So they did. The neighborhood around Mel's wasn't fancy. Lived in, Derek called it, which was a polite way of saying the paint was peeling and the sidewalks needed fixing. But the corner bodega was still open, windows bright against the darkening sky. Someone was cooking something that smelled like garlic and tomatoes. A dog barked from a second-floor window. "I like it here," Vanessa said. "Really? It feels like people actually live here. Not just exist, actually live." "Your neighborhood doesn't feel that way?" "My neighborhood feels like a museum. Everything's perfect and preserved and untouchable." She stepped over a crack in the sidewalk. "This feels human." They walked 3 blocks without really going anywhere, just meandering past closed storefronts and parked cars and trees that hadn't decided to bloom yet. Vanessa's phone rang twice. She ignored it both times. "You can answer that," Mason said. "I don't want to." "What if it's important?" "It's always important. That's the problem." She pulled the phone out long enough to silence it. "If the building's on fire, someone will call 3 more times. Otherwise, it can wait." "Doesn't that stress you out?" "Less than answering does." They turned down a side street where someone had painted a mural on the brick wall of a laundromat. Bright colors, abstract shapes, nothing Mason could identify, but somehow pleasing anyway. Vanessa stopped to look at it. "Charlie would love this," she said. "How do you know?" "Because it's weird and colorful and doesn't make immediate sense. That seems like his style." She wasn't wrong. Mason pulled out his phone and took a picture. "I'll show him." "Will you tell him who you were with?" The question caught him off guard. "Do you want me to?" "I don't know. Does he ask about your dates?" "He asked if I found someone who likes dinosaurs. I told him I was working on it." Vanessa's smile was soft. "I do like dinosaurs. Not as much as Charlie probably does, but I went through a phase in 3rd grade. I wrote a whole report on velociraptors." "He'd approve." "Would you?" "Approve, I mean, of me meeting him." Mason's chest tightened. "It's too soon for that." "I know, I wasn't suggesting, I just meant hypothetically. Eventually. If this—" She gestured between them. "If this keeps going." "Do you want it to keep going?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Do you?" Mason looked at her standing there in the fading light, ponytail slightly messed up from the wind, mascara smudged under one eye like she'd rubbed it without thinking. She looked nothing like a billionaire and everything like someone he could actually care about. That's what terrified him. "Yeah," he said. "I do." "But?" "How did you know there was a but?" "Because there's always a but." Vanessa leaned against the brick wall beside the mural. "Say it. Whatever you're thinking. This can't be casual." "I don't do casual." "I mean it, Vanessa. I have a kid. I can't introduce people into his life who aren't going to stick around. He's already lost one parent who decided he wasn't worth staying for. I won't put him through that again." "I understand." "Do you? Because your world moves fast. Mine doesn't. Mine moves at the speed of homework and bedtime stories and parent-teacher conferences. I can't keep up with whatever pace you're used to." "I'm not asking you to keep up. I'm asking you to let me slow down." Mason studied her face, looking for doubt or uncertainty, or the polite retreat people did when they realized single parenthood was more complicated than they'd signed up for. He didn't find any of it. "This is going to be messy," he said. "I know. People are going to notice eventually. Your people, the media, whoever pays attention to what you do. Let them notice." Easy for you to say. You're used to attention. "I hate attention, but I hate the idea of walking away from this more." She pushed off the wall, stepped closer to him. "Mason, I've dated guys who looked perfect on paper. Right background, right education, right tax bracket. Every single one of them was wrong because they didn't actually see me. They saw the company, the money, the headlines. You see me. I'm not giving that up because it might get complicated. It will definitely get complicated." "Good. I'm tired of simple." Mason didn't plan to kiss her. Wasn't the right time, standing on a random sidewalk in front of a laundromat mural while someone's car alarm continued its distant wailing. But Vanessa was looking at him like he mattered more than boardrooms and stock prices and all the other things that usually filled her life. And he'd been alone for so long, he'd forgotten what that felt like. So he kissed her. It wasn't smooth or practiced. His hand went to her cheek and found her hair instead, getting tangled in the ponytail. She made a small sound of surprise against his mouth before her hands found his jacket, pulling him closer. She tasted like coffee and syrup and something else he couldn't name but wanted to memorize. When they broke apart, both breathing harder than the kiss probably warranted, Vanessa laughed. "What?" Mason asked. "Nothing. Just, that was terrible timing. Completely. We're standing in front of a laundromat. I noticed. There's literally a guy watching us from the window." Mason glanced over. Sure enough, an elderly man was folding clothes and pretending not to stare. He waved. The man waved back. "We should probably move," Mason said. "Probably." Neither of them moved. Vanessa's phone rang again. This time she actually looked at it, and her expression shifted into something Mason was learning to recognize as her CEO face. Professional, distant, unreachable. "I have to take this," she said. "It's okay." "It's not, but I have to anyway." She stepped back, already swiping to answer. "This is Vanessa." Mason watched her walk a few feet away, her whole posture changing, shoulders straight, voice clipped. She was talking about product delays and manufacturing timelines and things that reminded him forcefully that her life existed on a completely different scale than his. The call lasted 4 minutes. When she came back, she looked exhausted. "Sorry," she said. "Stop apologizing." "Stop? That's easier said than done." She rubbed her eyes, smearing the mascara worse. "I have to go. There's a situation with one of our overseas suppliers, and if I don't handle it now, it'll spiral into something that costs us millions by Monday." "I understand." "Do you hate me?" "What? No, why would I?" "Because I just kissed you in front of a laundromat, and now I'm bailing to deal with supply chain logistics." Mason caught her hand before she could pull away completely. "Vanessa, it's fine. This is your job. I get it." "Most people don't." "I'm not most people." "No," she said softly. "You're really not." She called her driver. He arrived within 3 minutes, which said something about how much he'd actually left versus just circling nearby. The car was one of those sleek black sedans that probably cost more than Mason's annual salary. Before she got in, Vanessa turned back to him. "Next weekend," she said. "If you're free." "I have Charlie." Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe. But she nodded. "Right, of course." But Mason wasn't sure what he was about to say until the words were already out. "Sunday afternoon, if you want to meet us at the park. Nothing formal, just we usually go to the one on Ashland. Around 2. Charlie feeds the ducks even though you're not supposed to. You could come if you want." Vanessa's eyes went wide. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm saying it anyway." "What if he doesn't like me?" "He will." "You can't know that. He likes dinosaurs and people who don't treat him like he's annoying. You qualify on both counts." "Mason, you don't have to decide now. Just think about it. If you show up, you show up. If you don't, I'll understand." The driver cleared his throat politely. Vanessa ignored him. "I'll be there," she said. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She kissed him again, quick and soft, before sliding into the car. Mason watched the taillights disappear around the corner, then stood alone on the sidewalk trying to process what he'd just done. He'd invited Vanessa Hale to meet his son, in a public park, where anyone could see them. His phone rang. Derek, obviously. "Hey," Mason answered. "How'd it go? Was it good? Did you kiss her?" "You kissed her, didn't you?" "How could you possibly?" "Because you sound different. Happy different. When's the next one?" "Sunday." "Sunday? That's 3 days away, man. You're moving fast." "Charlie's going to be there." Dead silence on the other end. Then, "What?" "I invited her to the park to meet Charlie." "Holy Mason, that's huge." "I know." "Are you freaking out?" "Completely." "Do you need me to talk you out of it?" Mason thought about Vanessa standing in front of the laundromat mural, telling him she was tired of simple. Thought about the way she'd asked about Charlie like he actually mattered. Thought about 6 years of keeping people at arm's length because none of them had been worth the risk. "No," he said. I really don't.
Derek was quiet for a moment.
Okay then, call me after. I want details.
You'll get a summary. I want details.
You'll get what I give you. Mason hung up before Derek could argue, then started the walk back to his car. The temperature had dropped further, his breath fogging in the air. His lips still tingled from kissing Vanessa. His heart was doing things that felt dangerously close to hope. He drove home through familiar streets, past the corner store where he bought Charlie's juice boxes and the library where they spent rainy Saturday afternoons. His apartment building looked exactly the same as always. A little worn, a little tired, but home in a way nowhere else had ever been. Charlie wouldn't be back until tomorrow afternoon. The apartment would be empty and quiet, and exactly what Mason usually told himself he preferred. He unlocked the door and stepped into the silence. For the first time in 6 years, it didn't feel like enough. His phone buzzed. Made it home. Thank you for tonight, for all of it. Mason smiled at the screen. See you Sunday. Bring bread for the ducks. Charlie takes it seriously. I wouldn't dare show up unprepared. Then, a moment later, I'm nervous. Me too. What if I say the wrong thing? You won't. What if he asks why I'm there? Mason thought about that. I'll tell him the truth, that you're someone I like spending time with, someone I want him to meet. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared 3 times before her response came through. Okay, I can work with that. Vanessa? Yeah? Stop overthinking this, says the man who almost drove away from our first date. She had a point. Fair enough. We'll overthink it together. Deal. Mason set his phone on the counter and looked around his empty apartment. Charlie's drawings covered the refrigerator. Action figures lined the windowsill in some order only a 6-year-old could understand. A stack of library books about the Jurassic period sat on the coffee table waiting to be returned. This was his life. Small and ordinary and completely insufficient for someone like Vanessa Hale. But she'd asked to be part of it anyway. Sunday was going to change everything. Mason could feel it coming like weather, inevitable and potentially destructive. He could still back out. Could text her tomorrow and say he'd made a mistake, moved too fast, wasn't ready. He picked up his phone. Can't wait to see you, he typed. The response was immediate. Same. Mason went to bed that night with his alarm set for Charlie's pickup tomorrow and a growing certainty that he'd just invited a hurricane into his carefully controlled life. The terrifying part was how much he was looking forward to it. Sunday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like a personal insult to Mason's nerves. Clear blue sky, temperature in the mid-60s, just enough breeze to keep it from being too warm. The kind of day that belonged in a commercial for family-friendly outdoor activities, not the day he introduced his son to the woman he was falling for. Charlie was vibrating with excess energy from the moment Mason picked him up, talking non-stop about the trampoline at Ethan's house and the dog that had licked his face and the movie they'd watched that had way too much kissing, but the dinosaurs were scientifically accurate mostly. Dad, can we get a dog? Charlie asked for the 14th time that month from the back seat. We've talked about this, buddy. I know, but Ethan's dog is really cool and she knows tricks and she doesn't even bark that much. Our lease says no pets. That's a stupid rule. Charlie. Sorry, that's a rule I disagree with respectfully. Mason hid a smile. Better. They stopped at the apartment long enough for Charlie to change out of his overnight clothes and grab his dinosaur backpack, which he'd packed with the essentials. 3 action figures, a book about the Cretaceous period, and a half-eaten granola bar he'd forgotten about last week. Mason added a water bottle and the bag of bread heels he'd been saving specifically for duck feeding purposes. Why are we going to the park now instead of after lunch? Charlie asked, struggling with his shoelaces. Mason knelt down to help without being asked. Because we're meeting someone there. Who? Mason's hand stilled on the laces. A friend of mine. Her name is Vanessa. Is she nice? Very nice. Does she like dinosaurs? She wrote a whole report about velociraptors when she was in 3rd grade. Charlie's eyes went wide. Really? Really? Okay, she can come. Charlie stood up, laces tied, completely unaware he'd just given Mason permission for something that had been eating him alive for 3 days. Can we go now? Yeah, buddy, we can go now. The park on Ashland was a 10-minute walk from their apartment, a decent-sized stretch of grass and trees that somehow survived in the middle of the city. It had a playground that had seen better days, a pond that was generous to call a pond, and more accurate to call an oversized puddle, and enough ducks to keep Charlie entertained for hours. They arrived at exactly 1:47 p.m., 13 minutes early. Mason had timed it that way deliberately, wanting to be settled and calm before Vanessa showed up. Wanting Charlie distracted enough by ducks that the introduction might feel natural instead of staged. "Can I feed them now?" Charlie was already pulling at the bread bag. "Wait until we get closer to the water, and remember the rules." I know. Small pieces so they don't choke. Don't chase them, don't try to touch them even though they're really soft looking." Charlie recited it like a mantra he'd memorized. "Can we go now?" They walked to the edge of the pond where half a dozen ducks were doing whatever ducks did when they weren't being fed by 6-year-olds. Charlie tore bread into careful pieces, his tongue sticking out in concentration. He threw the first piece, and a duck immediately paddled over. "Dad, look! That one remembers me. I don't think that's how duck memory works, bud." "You don't know. Maybe it is." Mason checked his phone. 1:53 p.m. 7 minutes until Vanessa was supposed to arrive, assuming she was on time, assuming she actually came, assuming she hadn't woken up this morning and realized what a terrible idea this was. His phone buzzed. "I'm here. By the entrance. Is now okay?" Mason's heart jumped into his throat. "Yeah, we're by the pond." He looked up and saw her. She was standing near the park entrance in jeans and a light blue jacket, her hair down around her shoulders, holding a bag that presumably contained bread for the ducks. She looked terrified. Mason understood the feeling. "Charlie, the friend I mentioned? She's here." Charlie looked up from duck feeding duty. "Where?" "Over there, in the blue jacket." Charlie squinted in Vanessa's direction, then shrugged and went back to throwing bread. "Okay, can she help me feed them?" "If she wants to." Mason waved at Vanessa. She saw him and started walking over, and he noticed she was moving carefully, like she was approaching something that might spook easily. When she got close enough, she stopped a few feet away and smiled at Charlie. "Hi," she said. "You must be Charlie." Charlie looked up at her, assessing. "Did you bring bread?" Vanessa held up her bag. "I did. Is that okay?" "Yeah, you can help, but you have to do small pieces. Dad's rules?" "I can do that." She knelt down on the grass beside Charlie, not seeming to care that it was probably damp. Mason watched his son hand her a piece of bread and show her exactly how to tear it into duck-appropriate sizes. Vanessa followed his instructions with complete seriousness. "That one's Gerald," Charlie said, pointing at a duck with a distinctive dark patch on its head. "I named him. Dad says I can't actually name the ducks because they're wild animals, but I did it anyway." "Gerald's a good name," Vanessa said. "I know. That one's Susan, and that one's Pterodactyl because he's got a long neck." "Pterodactyls don't actually have long necks." Charlie's head whipped around to stare at her. "You know about pterodactyls?" "A little bit. I know they're not technically dinosaurs. They're flying reptiles." "Exactly." Charlie's face broke into the biggest smile Mason had seen in weeks. "Dad, she knows about pterodactyls." "I heard, buddy." For the next 20 minutes, Mason stood back and watched his son and Vanessa feed ducks and discuss the Mesozoic era with the kind of intensity most people reserved for sports or politics. Vanessa asked questions that weren't condescending. Charlie answered them with the patience of someone who'd been waiting his whole life for an adult to actually care about the answers. "Did you really write a report about velociraptors?" Charlie asked, throwing another piece of bread. "I did. In 3rd grade. Got an A-. Why not an A?" "Because I spent 3 paragraphs arguing with my teacher about whether Jurassic Park was scientifically accurate." "It's not," Charlie said immediately. "The velociraptors are way too big, and they didn't have feathers, and the T-Rex vision thing is completely wrong." "Exactly what I said," Vanessa grinned. My teacher was not impressed. "Teachers don't always like it when you're smarter than them." "Charlie," Mason said automatically. "Sorry, I mean, teachers don't always appreciate factual corrections." Vanessa laughed, and it was the real laugh Mason had heard at Mel's, not the polished one she probably used in boardrooms. "You're absolutely right. They don't." When the bread ran out, Charlie announced he needed to show Vanessa the really cool rocks by the playground. Mason followed at a distance, giving them space but staying close enough to intervene if needed. He needn't have worried. Charlie was in full tour guide mode, pointing out his favorite climbing tree and the swings that went really high if you pumped your legs right, and the spot where he'd found a really cool beetle last summer. "Do you have a job?" Charlie asked suddenly.
"I do," Vanessa said. "What kind?" "I run a company that makes computer programs." "That sounds boring." "Charlie," Mason said, but Vanessa was already laughing. "Sometimes it is boring," she admitted. "But sometimes it's really cool. We're working on a program right now that can help doctors find diseases earlier." "Like cancer?" "Exactly like cancer." Charlie thought about this. "My friend Ethan's grandma had cancer. She's okay now, though." "I'm glad she's okay. Are you good at your job?" "Charlie, that's—" Mason started, but Vanessa waved him off. "I think I'm pretty good at it," she said. "Some days better than others. What about you? Are you good at school?" "I'm really good at science and reading. Math is okay. I don't like spelling tests because English doesn't make sense." "English is a terrible language for spelling. Too many exceptions to the rules." "That's what I said." Charlie looked delighted. "But my teacher says I have to learn it anyway." "Unfortunately, your teacher's right about that one." They reached the playground. Charlie immediately headed for the monkey bars, hanging upside down with the casual fearlessness of someone who hadn't yet learned that gravity could be unkind. Vanessa watched him with an expression Mason couldn't quite read. "He's amazing," she said quietly. "He's showing off." "He's brilliant. He's 6.
"He's both."
Vanessa turned to look at Mason. "You're doing an incredible job with him." "I'm winging it most days. Aren't we all?" Charlie dropped from the monkey bars and ran over. "Dad, can Vanessa push me on the swings?" "If she wants to." "Do you want to?" Charlie asked Vanessa directly. "I would love to."
Mason sat on a bench and watched Vanessa push his son on the swings, listened to Charlie's laughter echo across the playground. Other families were scattered around the park, parents on their phones while kids played, couples walking dogs, teenagers throwing a frisbee with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Normal Sunday afternoon things. Except nothing about this felt normal. Vanessa Hale was pushing his son on a swing. The same woman who'd been featured in Forbes was currently being ordered to push higher by a 6-year-old with grass stains on his knees. And she was doing it, laughing every time Charlie screamed with delight. Mason's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Is that Vanessa Hale at Ashland Park with some kid?" His stomach dropped. He looked around the park, trying to spot whoever had sent it. There, a woman about 30 yards away, phone pointed in their direction. Before Mason could decide what to do, another text came through. "OMG, it is her. This is going straight to Reddit." Mason stood up and walked over to the swings. "Charlie, 5 more minutes, okay?" "Oh, but we just got here." "It's been almost an hour, buddy." Vanessa caught the swing to slow it down, and Mason saw her notice his expression. "What's wrong?" "Someone's taking pictures." Her face went carefully blank. "Where?" "Over by the trees, woman in the gray hoodie." Vanessa didn't look. "How do you know?" "She texted me. I don't know how she got my number." "She probably didn't. Probably texted it to someone who texted someone who knows you." Vanessa's voice was calm, practiced. "It's fine." "It's not fine. Charlie's in those pictures." "I know." She looked at Charlie, who had already jumped off the swing and was investigating something in the grass. "I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. You wore jeans and fed ducks. How much more careful could you be?" "I could have not come." "Don't say that. Mason." "Dad, look." Charlie ran over holding a stick. It's shaped exactly like a Y. "That's awesome, bud." "Can I keep it?" "Sure." Charlie ran off to find more stick-based treasures. Mason checked his phone again. 3 more texts from random numbers, all asking if that was really Vanessa Hale. Was she dating someone? Who was the kid? Was this a story? "We should go," Vanessa said. "No." "Mason, we're not leaving because some stranger decided to be invasive." Mason kept his voice low so Charlie wouldn't hear. "You wanted normal. This is normal. People bring their kids to parks on Sundays. We're not doing anything wrong. The pictures are going to end up online, so let them." "You don't understand what that means." "So explain it to me." Vanessa glanced at Charlie, making sure he was out of earshot. "It means by tomorrow morning, There will be articles speculating about who you are, where you work, whether you have money, what you want from me. They'll find your social media, your address, probably your tax returns if they look hard enough. And Charlie, her voice cracked slightly. They'll talk about Charlie, about his mother, about whether I'm trying to play house with someone else's family. Mason felt cold despite the sunshine. That's insane. That's my life. Then your life is broken. I know. That's why I... She stopped, looked away. That's why this was a bad idea. Meeting Charlie? All of it. You. This. I should have known better. Don't do that. Do what? Run before anyone even throws a punch. Mason stepped closer, lowering his voice further. So, some people are going to talk. Let them talk. We didn't do anything wrong. You don't get it. This isn't just talk. This is... Vanessa! Charlie's voice cut through the tension. Come see what I found. Vanessa's expression shifted immediately, the CEO mask sliding into place. Coming! She walked over to where Charlie was crouched by a tree, examining something in the dirt. Mason stayed by the swings, trying to calm the anger building in his chest. Not at Vanessa. At the situation. At the idea that someone sharing a normal Sunday afternoon with a 6-year-old could become a story worth photographing. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Derek. Dude, are you at Ashland Park with Vanessa Hale? Because someone just posted a picture on Twitter and people are freaking out, Mason typed back. Yeah, we're here. It's fine. It's not fine. Have you seen the replies? No, don't. Seriously, just don't look. Of course Mason looked. The picture was grainy but clear enough. Vanessa pushing Charlie on the swing, both of them caught mid-laugh. The caption, spotted, Vanessa Hale playing mom at a Chicago park. New boyfriend, secret family. Sources say she's been sneaking around with a mystery man for weeks. The replies were worse. Who is he? Anyone know? Probably another gold digger. She needs better security. That kid is adorable, though. Plot twist. She's his nanny LOL. I ship it. CEO finding love with a regular guy is my favorite trope. Mason closed Twitter before he could read more. When he looked up, Vanessa was walking back toward him with Charlie in tow. Her face was composed, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. Charlie wants ice cream, she said. There's a place 2 blocks from here. You don't have to... I want to. She met his eyes. Please. So they went for ice cream. The shop was small and crowded with Sunday afternoon families. Charlie ordered chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. Vanessa got vanilla. Mason got nothing because his stomach was still twisted in knots. They sat at a small table by the window while Charlie demolished his cone with the focus of someone who took ice cream very seriously. This is really good, Charlie announced, sprinkles stuck to his chin. I'm glad, Vanessa said. Do you have kids? The question landed like a brick. Vanessa's hand stilled on her cup. No, she said carefully. I don't. Why not? Charlie, Mason said. That's kind of a personal question. Sorry, I was just wondering. Charlie took another huge bite of ice cream. You're really good at pushing swings. Most adults don't push high enough. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. I'm very particular about swing pushing. Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Mason watched her trace patterns on her cup with one finger, not drinking, just holding it like she needed something to do with her hands. When Charlie finished his ice cream and immediately asked to go to the bathroom, Mason took him. In the tiny single-stall bathroom with dinosaur stickers peeling off the walls, Charlie washed his hands without being asked. I like Vanessa, he said to his reflection in the mirror. Yeah? Yeah, she's nice, and she knows a lot about dinosaurs. She does. Is she your girlfriend? Mason's hand stilled on the paper towel dispenser. Would that be okay with you? Charlie thought about it with the seriousness of someone being asked to make an important decision. Does she make you happy? Yeah, buddy, she does. Then it's okay. Charlie dried his hands and tossed the paper towel toward the trash can, missing by a mile. Can we go back now? I want to ask her about the feathers. What feathers? On velociraptors. I want to know if she knew about them in 3rd grade or if that's new information. They went back to the table. Vanessa was staring at her phone, her expression unreadable. She looked up when they approached and Mason saw something flash across her face. Fear, maybe. Or resignation. Everything okay? he asked. Fine. She pocketed her phone. Ready to go? They walked back to the park to get Mason's car. Charlie ran ahead, still full of energy despite the ice cream sugar crash that was definitely coming. Mason and Vanessa followed at a slower pace. Talk to me, Mason said quietly. About what? Whatever's going through your head right now. You don't want to know. I really do. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. My publicist just called. 3 different gossip sites have already posted the picture. By tomorrow, it'll be in actual publications. They're going to dig into your life, Mason, into Charlie's, and I can't stop it. So don't stop it. You're not listening. I am listening. I just don't care. You should care. This affects Charlie. Charlie's fine. He's 6. He doesn't read gossip sites. But other people do. Other parents. His teachers. Kids at school whose parents will tell them things. Vanessa stopped walking. I've destroyed people's lives just by being associated with them. This was selfish. I was selfish. Mason turned to face her. Look at me. She did. You didn't destroy anything. You pushed my kid on a swing and talked about velociraptors and ate ice cream. That's it. That's all you did. It's not that simple. It is that simple. Everything else is noise. Noise that follows me everywhere. Then I guess it follows us now. Mason reached for her hand. I'm not running because people are talking. If you want to run, that's your choice. But don't do it because you think you're protecting us. Charlie had the best afternoon he's had in weeks. I'm not sorry for that. Vanessa's eyes were bright with tears she was clearly trying not to shed. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but I'm not regretting it today. Charlie came running back. Dad, we forgot to see if Gerald was still there. Buddy, we need to head home. But how about next Sunday? Vanessa said suddenly. Both Mason and Charlie turned to stare at her. We could come back, same time. Feed the ducks again, if you want. Charlie looked at Mason. Can we? Mason looked at Vanessa. She was offering this despite everything she just said about being selfish and destroying lives, offering to come back and do it again. Yeah, Mason said. We can do that. Yes! Charlie pumped his fist. Vanessa, did you know that some ducks can actually fly upside down? I did not know that. Well, they can, probably. I read it somewhere. They walked back to the car together, Charlie chattering about duck aerodynamics and Vanessa asking follow-up questions that were just detailed enough to keep him going. Mason unlocked the Civic and started loading Charlie into his booster seat. Can Vanessa come over for dinner? Charlie asked. Charlie, please, we're having spaghetti and you always make too much anyway. Mason looked at Vanessa over the roof of the car. She was biting her lip, clearly trying not to influence his decision. Do you want to? He asked. I don't want to impose. That's not what I asked. Vanessa glanced at Charlie, who was watching her with hopeful eyes. I would love to, if you're sure. We're sure. The drive back to Mason's apartment took 12 minutes. Charlie narrated the entire thing, pointing out landmarks Vanessa probably couldn't care less about, but pretended to find fascinating. Mason's building looked even more worn next to the gleaming towers of downtown, but Vanessa didn't seem to notice or care. It's a walk-up, Mason warned as they climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, and the elevator's been broken since February. Good exercise, Vanessa said. Mason unlocked the door to his apartment and immediately saw it through her eyes. The worn couch, the mismatched furniture, the explosion of Charlie's belongings across every available surface. It was clean but cluttered, lived in, nothing like the sterile perfection she probably went home to. Welcome to chaos, he said. I love it, Vanessa said, and she sounded like she meant it. Charlie immediately ran to his room to get his dinosaur books, shouting something about showing Vanessa his comprehensive collection. Mason went to the kitchen to start dinner, hyper-aware of Vanessa following him. Can I help? She asked. You're a guest. I can boil water. That's about the extent of my cooking skills, but I can contribute that much. So Mason put her in charge of pasta while he worked on the sauce. They moved around each other in the small kitchen, not quite comfortable, but not awkward either. Vanessa asked where things were instead of assuming. She didn't comment on the chipped dishes or the faucet that dripped no matter how tight you turned it. Charlie emerged with an armful of books and spread them across the coffee table. Vanessa, you have to see this one. It's got illustrations of what scientists think velociraptors actually looked like with feathers. Show me,
Vanessa said, abandoning the pasta to sit cross-legged on the floor next to Charlie.
Mason watched them from the kitchen while he stirred sauce. Watched Charlie explain in excruciating detail why the artist got some things right and other things wrong. Watched Vanessa listen like every word mattered. This was his life, the reality of it. Sunday spaghetti and dinosaur lectures and a kitchen that barely fit 2 people. And Vanessa was sitting on his floor looking at picture books, like there was nowhere else she'd rather be. They ate dinner at the small table, Charlie between them still talking about the Cretaceous period. Vanessa asked questions. Mason filled water glasses. It was aggressively normal and completely surreal. After dinner, Charlie insisted on showing Vanessa his room. Mason followed, watching his son point out every action figure and explain the significance of how they were arranged. Vanessa sat on the floor and let Charlie demonstrate his entire collection. This one's a T-Rex, but the arms are in the wrong proportion. And this one's supposed to be a Triceratops, but the horns are too short. And this one, buddy, maybe Vanessa doesn't need the full tour. No, I want to hear about this one, Vanessa said, picking up a plastic pterodactyl. Charlie beamed and launched into another explanation. It was past 7 when Vanessa's phone rang. She glanced at it and her expression shifted. I have to take this, she said. I'm sorry. She stepped into the hallway. Mason could hear her voice through the door, clipped and professional, nothing like the woman who'd been sitting on his floor discussing dinosaur accuracy. Charlie yawned. Is Vanessa leaving? Probably soon, yeah. Can she come back? We'll see, bud. I hope she does. She's really good at listening. Mason's chest tightened. Yeah, she really is. Vanessa came back in looking exhausted. I have to go. There's a situation with, it doesn't matter. I just have to go. Of course. Charlie, it was so nice meeting you. She knelt down to his level. Thank you for showing me your collection and teaching me about duck physics. It's aerodynamics, Charlie corrected. Right, aerodynamics. Will you come back next Sunday? Vanessa glanced at Mason. He nodded. I'll be here, she said. Mason walked her to the door while Charlie got distracted by a book he'd left open. In the hallway, with the door closed behind them, Vanessa sagged against the wall. That was harder than any board meeting I've ever sat through, she said. You were perfect. I was terrified. Charlie loved you. How do you know? Because he asked when you're coming back before you even left. Vanessa's smile was tired but real. He's incredible, Mason. You know that, right? He's absolutely incredible. I know. I meant what I said. I'll be here next Sunday. Even with the pictures, the articles? Especially because of them. She pushed off the wall. I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending my life is full when it's mostly just empty rooms and people who want things from me. Today was... She stopped. Today was the most real thing I've done in years. Mason kissed her then, in the dim hallway that smelled like someone's cooking and old carpet. It was quick and soft, and tasted like goodbye and see you soon at the same time. Text me when you get home, he said. I will. He watched her walk down the stairs, listened to her footsteps echo in the stairwell. Then he went back inside to find Charlie already in his pajamas, teeth brushed without being asked. I like her, Dad, Charlie said, climbing into bed. Me too, buddy. Is she going to be around a lot? Mason thought about pictures on Twitter and articles that would dissect their lives by morning. Thought about Vanessa sitting on his floor listening to dinosaur facts. Thought about the terrifying, exhilarating feeling of letting someone in after 6 years of keeping everyone out. I think so, he said. Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. Charlie yawned again. She's not like the other people you went on dates with. How do you know about those? Uncle Derek told me. He said they were disasters. Uncle Derek talks too much. He does. But he's right. Vanessa's different. She actually cares. Mason tucked the blanket around Charlie's shoulders. How can you tell? Because she looked at you the same way you look at me. Like you're important. Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds. Mason kissed Charlie's forehead and turned out the light. His phone buzzed the moment he closed the bedroom door. Made it home. Today was perfect. Thank you. Thank Charlie. He did all the heavy lifting. I'm serious, Mason. I haven't felt that normal in years. Good. You deserve normal. So do you. Mason set his phone down and looked around his quiet apartment. Dishes still in the sink, Charlie's books spread across the coffee table, dinosaur drawings covering the refrigerator, his small, ordinary, perfectly imperfect life. And now Vanessa was part of it. His phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Vanessa. It was a screenshot from Derek. The article headline read, "Vanessa Hale's secret family, billionaire CEO, spotted at park with mystery man and child." Below it, the grainy photo of Vanessa pushing Charlie on the swing. And below that, hundreds of comments speculating about who Mason was, what he wanted, whether this was a publicity stunt or a real relationship or something in between. Mason deleted the screenshot without reading further. Let them talk. By Monday morning, Mason's inbox had 17 emails from addresses he didn't recognize, all asking variations of the same question. Was he dating Vanessa Hale, and would he like to comment for their publication? He deleted them all without reading past the subject lines. Charlie's school pickup that afternoon was worse. Mason arrived at his usual spot outside the elementary school, leaning against the Civic's hood while he waited for the dismissal bell. He was scrolling through his phone when he felt eyes on him. Multiple sets of eyes. 3 mothers he vaguely recognized from parent-teacher conferences were standing in a cluster about 10 feet away, phones out, not even pretending they weren't staring. One of them whispered something to the others, and they all laughed. Mason pocketed his phone and crossed his arms, fighting the urge to get back in his car. He'd done nothing wrong. Vanessa had done nothing wrong. If people wanted to make a spectacle out of a normal Sunday afternoon, that was their problem, not his. The bell rang. Kids flooded out of the building in their usual chaotic surge. Charlie spotted Mason immediately and ran over, backpack bouncing. "Dad, guess what we learned about today?" "What's that?" "The water cycle. Mrs. Patterson said," "Excuse me?" One of the mothers had detached from her group and was approaching them. She had the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're Charlie's dad, right, Mason?" "That's me." "I'm Jennifer, Aiden's mom." She gestured vaguely toward a kid Mason had never noticed. "We were just wondering, and I hope this isn't too forward, but was that really Vanessa Hale you were with yesterday?" Mason felt Charlie tense beside him. "Yeah, it was." "Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. How did you two meet?" "Through a friend. And she's just so down-to-earth in person, isn't she? I mean, you'd never know she's worth billions." "She's a person," Mason said flatly. "Same as anyone." Of course, of course. I just think it's so wonderful that she's taking an interest in—" Jennifer's gaze dropped to Charlie. "Well, in family life. She doesn't have children of her own, does she?" Mason's jaw tightened. "We need to get going." "Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to say, if you ever need someone to talk to about navigating all this attention, I'm happy to—" "We're fine. Thanks." Mason put his hand on Charlie's shoulder. "Come on, bud." They were halfway to the car when Charlie spoke up. "Who's Vanessa Hale?" Mason stopped walking. "What?" "That lady called her Vanessa Hale, but we just call her Vanessa." "Why did she say it like that?" "Because Vanessa's last name is Hale, like your last name is Reed." "Oh, okay." Charlie climbed into the back seat and started buckling himself in. Aiden's mom is weird. She smells like flowers, but not good flowers. Weird flowers. Despite everything, Mason smiled. That's an interesting observation. The drive home was mercifully normal. Charlie talked about the water cycle and his friend Ethan's upcoming birthday party and whether pterodactyls could swim. Mason listened and made appropriate sounds and tried not to think about the looks from the other parents or the 17 emails or the article Derek had sent him that morning with the headline, "Inside Vanessa Hale's Secret Romance with a Single Dad." His phone rang when they were 2 blocks from home. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. "Can you grab that, Charlie? Hit the speaker button." "Hello?" Charlie said into the phone. "Oh, hi, Charlie. It's Vanessa. Is your dad there?" "He's driving. We're on speaker. I learned about the water cycle today." "That's one of my favorite cycles." "Really? What's your favorite part?" "Condensation. I like that clouds are basically just water waiting to fall." "That's a good answer. Dad, Vanessa likes condensation." "I heard, buddy." Mason pulled into his parking spot and killed the engine. Charlie unbuckled himself and grabbed his backpack. "Can I go play in the courtyard?" "Homework first." "But Dad—" "Homework first, then 30 minutes outside before dinner." Charlie groaned but trudged toward their building. Mason waited until he was out of earshot before taking the phone off speaker. "Hey," he said. "Hi. Is this a bad time?" "No, it's... How are you?" "I should be asking you that. I saw the articles."
"I didn't read them." Smart. Vanessa sounded tired. "My publicist is having a breakdown. She's been calling me every hour with new developments, like I'm supposed to care that some blogger in California has opinions about my personal life." "What did you tell her?" "That she's fired if she calls me one more time today." "Did you mean it?" "Absolutely not. She's excellent at her job. But she needed to hear it anyway."
Mason leaned against his car, phone pressed to his ear. "I got ambushed at school pickup."
"What happened?"
"One of the other moms wanted to know if you're really that down to earth in person. Used air quotes and everything." "I'm sorry." "You didn't do anything wrong. I brought a circus to your front door." "You brought yourself. The circus showed up on its own." Mason watched a bird land on the fence surrounding the courtyard. "Charlie asked me who Vanessa Hale is." Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "What did you tell him?" "That it's your last name. He said the mom who asked was weird." Vanessa laughed, sharp and surprised. "He's not wrong." "Are you okay?" Mason asked. "Really? I don't know. This is different than the usual media attention. Usually it's about the company or some acquisition or my opinion on tech policy. This is personal." "Yeah, and I don't know how to handle personal." "You don't have to handle it alone. Mason, you have enough to worry about without taking on my disasters too." "It's not a disaster. It's people being invasive about something that's none of their business. There's a difference." "You're remarkably calm about this." "I'm faking it. I'm actually planning to throw my phone in the lake." "Don't. Then I couldn't call you." "Good point. I'll just delete my email instead." "Also a solid plan." Vanessa exhaled hard. "Can I see you this week? Before Sunday?" "You don't have to wait until Sunday." "I know, but I don't want to disrupt Charlie's routine or..." "Vanessa, do you want to see me this week?" "Yes." "Then we'll figure it out." Mason checked the time. "Charlie has homework and I have to make dinner, but after he goes to bed, we could talk. Just talk." "I'd like that." 8:30? "I'll call you." After they hung up, Mason sat in his car for another minute, watching parents and kids filter through the courtyard. Normal people doing normal things. He could do this, could navigate whatever came next as long as he remembered that underneath all the noise, this was just two people trying to figure out if they fit together. The week crawled by with the enthusiasm of a particularly stubborn Monday. Mason fielded 3 more ambush conversations at school pickup, deleted 47 emails, and blocked 6 numbers that kept calling with media requests. Charlie remained blissfully oblivious to most of it, more concerned with his science project on erosion than his dad's inadvertent brush with tabloid fame. Vanessa called every night at 8:30, Tuesday. They talked about work, hers stressful, and his boring, and somehow the boring parts made her laugh. Wednesday, she asked about Charlie's science project and ended up suggesting an experiment involving sugar cubes and water that Charlie immediately insisted on trying. Thursday, they didn't talk about anything important, just existed on the phone together while Vanessa worked late and Mason folded laundry. Friday night, she called at 8:15. "You're early," Mason said. "I know. I couldn't wait." "Rough day?" "Terrible day. Board meeting from hell, 3 executives who can't agree on anything, and a product delay that's going to cost us millions." She sounded exhausted. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Mason set down the dish he was washing. "You need to go home and sleep." "I am home. I've been home for an hour. I'm sitting in my absurdly large living room drinking wine and feeling sorry for myself." "That doesn't sound like you." "How would you know? You've known me for 3 weeks." "I know you don't sit around feeling sorry for yourself. You run 6 blocks in heels and write reports defending Jurassic Park and push kids on swings high enough to make them scream." "Maybe that's not the real me. Maybe that's just the version I show you." "Vanessa? Sorry. Ignore me. Wine and exhaustion make me philosophical." Mason dried his hands on a towel and moved to the couch. "Talk to me. Really talk." "About what?" "Whatever's actually bothering you, and don't say it's just work." She was quiet for so long he thought she might have hung up. Then,
I'm scared. Of what? That I'm going to mess this up. That the attention is going to get worse and you're going to realize dating me isn't worth the hassle. That Charlie's going to suffer because some photographer decides he's newsworthy. That I'm fundamentally incapable of having normal things because my life stopped being normal when I was 26 and built a company that accidentally became worth billions. That's a lot of fear for one person. I contain multitudes. Vanessa, look at me. Mason stopped. Okay, that doesn't work over the phone. Listen to me. Are you listening? Yes? I'm not going anywhere, not because of articles or emails or weird parents at school pickup. The only way this ends is if you decide you don't want it anymore, not because of external pressure, just if you actually don't want this. That's the only acceptable reason. What if I mess it up anyway? Then we'll both mess it up together. I'm not exactly an expert at relationships. My last one ended with my wife walking out because motherhood was limiting her potential. She's an idiot. She's definitely something. Mason stared at the ceiling. My point is, we're both going into this with damage, both scared, both completely unsure what we're doing, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe alone. That's either really romantic or really codependent. Can it be both? Vanessa laughed, and it sounded lighter than before. When can I see you? Sunday? Park? Ducks? Same as last week. What about before Sunday? You want to brave Charlie's erosion experiment tomorrow? I'm pretty sure our kitchen is going to end up flooded. I would love to brave Charlie's erosion experiment. So Saturday afternoon found Vanessa back in Mason's apartment, this time armed with a bag of supplies she'd picked up from a craft store. Charlie's eyes lit up when he saw the additional materials. You got modeling clay and extra food coloring. Dad, she got the good stuff. I see that. Mason looked at Vanessa. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to. Besides, if we're testing erosion properly, we need options. They spent 3 hours building miniature landscapes in Mason's kitchen, testing how water moved through different materials, documenting everything with the seriousness of actual scientists. Vanessa took notes. Charlie narrated his observations. Mason mostly tried to keep the water contained to the designated experiment area and failed spectacularly. Dad, it's supposed to overflow, Charlie said, watching water cascade over the edge of their clay mountain. That's how rivers form. Rivers don't usually form on my kitchen floor. They do in our experiment. Vanessa was laughing, actually laughing, crouched on the floor with her expensive jeans soaked through and her hair falling out of its ponytail. She looked nothing like a billionaire CEO and everything like someone who belonged there. This is the best science project ever, Charlie declared. Vanessa, can you help with all my projects? Charlie, Mason started. I'd be honored, Vanessa said. But only if your dad approves. Dad always approves of science. That's not exactly what I meant, bud. They cleaned up the experiment, which took twice as long as the actual experimentation, and ordered pizza because Mason's kitchen was too wet to cook in. Charlie picked a documentary about the Triassic period. They all sat on the couch, Charlie in the middle, pizza on paper plates, watching dinosaurs that had been extinct for 200 million years. Halfway through, Charlie fell asleep with his head on Vanessa's shoulder. Mason noticed first. Hey, I can move him. Don't. Vanessa's voice was soft. He's fine. So they sat there, documentary playing to an audience of one sleeping kid and two adults who were both trying not to acknowledge what this moment meant. When the credits rolled, Mason carefully lifted Charlie and carried him to his bedroom. Charlie mumbled something about erosion patterns, but didn't wake up when Mason tucked him in. When Mason came back to the living room, Vanessa was standing by the window, looking out at the courtyard below. The sun was setting, casting orange light across her face. You okay? Mason asked. I've never had that before, she said quietly. Had what? That. What we just did. Pizza and documentaries and a kid falling asleep on my shoulder. She turned to face him. My childhood was private schools and tutors and parents who loved me but didn't know what to do with a daughter who was smarter than her teachers by age 8. I skipped so many grades I never had friends my own age. By the time I was in college, I was building the company. By the time I was 30, I was running it. And somewhere in there, I forgot. She stopped. I forgot what normal was supposed to feel like. Mason crossed the room to stand beside her. And now? Now I'm standing in your apartment that smells like wet clay and pizza, and I'm happier than I've been in years. which is terrifying because I have no idea how to keep this. You don't keep it. You just show up, same as you did today. What if showing up isn't enough? It's always enough. Vanessa leaned into him, her head on his shoulder the same way Charlie's had been on hers. Mason wrapped his arms around her, and they stood there while the light faded and the courtyard below filled with evening sounds. "I'm falling for you," Vanessa said into his shirt, in case that wasn't obvious. Mason's heart did something complicated in his chest. It was obvious, but hearing it is nice. "Are you falling for me?" "Yeah, I really am. Even with all the chaos?"
Especially with the chaos. She pulled back to look at him. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most naive." "Probably both." "I can work with that." She kissed him there in the fading light, and it felt different than the previous kisses, less tentative, more certain, like they were both finally admitting this was real and scary and worth it all at once. When they broke apart, Vanessa's phone was ringing. She ignored it. "You can answer that," Mason said. "I don't want to." "It might be important." "It's always important. That's the problem." But she checked it anyway, and her expression shifted. "It's my head of security. I should—" "Take it." She stepped into the hallway. Mason could hear her voice through the door, sharp and professional. When she came back in, she looked furious. "What happened?" "Someone leaked my building's address to a gossip site. There are photographers camped outside my place." "Can security clear them?" "They're on public property. Legal says we can't do anything unless they actually trespass." Vanessa ran her hands through her hair. "I can't go home." "So don't." "Mason, stay here. Charlie's already asleep. You can take my bed, I'll take the couch." "I can't impose like that." "You're not imposing. You're avoiding photographers who are harassing you. There's a difference." "What will Charlie think if he wakes up and I'm here?" "He'll probably ask if you want pancakes." Despite everything, Vanessa smiled. "You're serious?" "Completely, unless you'd rather deal with cameras and invasive questions about your personal life." "When you put it that way." So Vanessa stayed. Mason gave her an old t-shirt and sweatpants to sleep in, tried not to think about how domestic that felt. He made up the couch for himself while Vanessa borrowed his bathroom to wash her face with whatever products she could improvise from his limited selection. "Your moisturizer situation is tragic," she called through the door. "I use whatever's on sale." "I'm buying you proper skincare." "You're not buying me anything." Too late. Already making a mental list. She emerged looking younger without makeup, her hair damp from washing her face. The t-shirt was too big and the sweatpants were too long, and Mason had to actively stop himself from staring. "This is weird, right?" Vanessa said. "This is objectively a weird situation." "Completely weird. But also kind of nice." "Also that." She sat on the edge of the couch beside him. "Thank you. For this. For not making me face the cameras alone." "You shouldn't have to face them at all. Welcome to my life." "Your life needs better boundaries." "Working on it." She yawned. "I should let you sleep." "You should sleep. My room is down the hall. Clean sheets, mostly comfortable mattress, climate control that works about 60% of the time." Sold. But she didn't move. Just sat there on the couch looking at him like she was trying to memorize his face. "What?" Mason asked. "Nothing. Just, this is nice, being here, being normal." "We're hiding you from paparazzi. That's not exactly normal." "It is for me." She kissed him goodnight, soft and quick, then disappeared down the hallway to his bedroom. Mason lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of his apartment settling around him. Vanessa Hale was sleeping in his bed, in his t-shirt, because photographers were camped outside her building and somehow his place had become the safer option. His phone buzzed. Derek, naturally. "Dude, Twitter is saying Vanessa never went home last night. Please tell me she's not at your place because the internet will lose it." Mason typed back. "She's here. Photographer situation at her building. You let her stay over?" "On the couch." "Where are you sleeping?" "Also the couch." "That's the same couch, man. Different nights, Derek. Use your brain. This is huge. This is relationship milestone huge. It's basic human decency. She needed a place to stay. Keep telling yourself that." Mason put his phone on silent and tried to sleep. It took a while. He woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Charlie's laughter.
Sunlight was streaming through the windows at an angle that suggested it was later than he usually slept. Mason sat up, disoriented, and found Vanessa and Charlie in the kitchen making pancakes. "Dad, Vanessa knows how to make them shaped like dinosaurs." "Does she?" Mason's voice was rough with sleep. "I Googled it," Vanessa said, not looking up from the griddle. "Turns out it's mostly about batter control and confidence." "She's really good at it," Charlie said seriously. "Look, this one's a stegosaurus." Mason looked. It was definitely dinosaur-shaped, though which specific dinosaur was up for interpretation. "That's impressive." "We made you coffee," Vanessa said. "It's probably cold now. You slept late." "What time is it?" "Almost 9. "Charlie, why didn't you wake me?" "Vanessa said you looked tired and needed sleep. Also, we were having fun making dinosaur pancakes and didn't want to stop." Mason accepted the cold coffee and watched them work together, Vanessa taking Charlie's directions seriously as he explained the proper plate-to-spine ratio for a stegosaurus. This was his Sunday morning, his kid and his... What was Vanessa? Girlfriend felt too small. The woman he was falling for felt too big. The woman making dinosaur pancakes in his kitchen at 9 a.m. on a Sunday because she'd needed somewhere safe to stay. "The photographers left around midnight," Vanessa said, sliding pancakes onto plates. "My security chief called. It's safe for me to go home." "Oh." Mason tried to keep his voice neutral. "Okay. But I was thinking, if it's okay with you two, maybe I could stay for breakfast first. And then we could still go to the park? Keep our Sunday tradition?" Charlie looked at Mason with hopeful eyes. Mason looked at Vanessa, who was holding a spatula and wearing his sweatpants and looking more uncertain than any billionaire CEO probably should. "Yeah," Mason said, "we can do that." So they ate dinosaur pancakes and argued about the Triassic period and eventually made it to the park where Gerald the duck was waiting by the pond like he'd known they were coming. Charlie fed the ducks while Mason and Vanessa sat on a bench watching him. "This is going to keep happening," Vanessa said quietly. "The photographers, the articles, the invasiveness." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with you. The rest is just noise." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "What if the noise gets too loud?" "Then we'll get louder." Charlie ran over, out of breath and excited. "Gerald brought friends. There's like 10 ducks now. Do we have more bread?" "In the bag, buddy." Charlie grabbed the bag and ran back to his growing duck audience. Vanessa watched him go with an expression Mason was learning to recognize as her actually happy face, different from her professional smile or her polite interest. "I love this," she said. "Feeding ducks?" "All of it. Sundays, parks, your kid explaining aerodynamics to waterfowl. You." She turned to look at him. "I know it's fast and probably too soon to say, but I don't care. I love this. I love being here. I love that Charlie fell asleep on my shoulder yesterday and that we flooded your kitchen with erosion experiments and that you let me stay over when I had nowhere else to go. I love that you don't treat me like I'm made of glass or money or expectations. I love this." Mason's throat was tight. "I love this too." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They sat there on the bench while Charlie performed duck diplomacy and other families filtered through the park, and somewhere in the city, people were probably still posting articles about Vanessa Hale's secret boyfriend and mystery child. Mason didn't care. Let them write their articles. Let them speculate and dissect and analyze. They didn't know Vanessa made dinosaur-shaped pancakes, or that she took Charlie's science projects seriously, or that she looked at Mason like he mattered more than quarterly earnings and stock prices. They didn't know anything that actually counted. "Next Sunday?" Vanessa asked. "Every Sunday," Mason said. "If you want." "I want." Charlie ran back over, completely out of breath and full of important duck-related news. They walked him to the playground where he immediately claimed the monkey bars as his kingdom. Mason and Vanessa followed at a distance, hands linked, pretending not to notice the occasional phone pointed in their direction. This was their life now, public and private, ordinary and extraordinary, complicated and somehow simple all at once. Mason wouldn't have changed it for anything. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were real in a way that mattered more than easy ever could.
Summer arrived with its usual Chicago humidity, turning the city into a sauna and making Mason's apartment feel approximately the size of a shoebox. Vanessa started keeping clothes in his closet without either of them explicitly discussing it. A toothbrush appeared in his bathroom, then face wash, then an entire shelf of products Charlie found endlessly fascinating. "Why do you need 3 different creams?" he asked one morning, examining Vanessa's skincare routine with scientific interest. "Because my face requires maintenance," Vanessa said, dabbing something under her eyes. "Dad just uses soap." "Your dad is a barbarian." "Hey," Mason protested from the kitchen where he was burning toast. "I'm standing right here." "A barbarian who burns toast," Vanessa called back. Charlie giggled. It was a sound Mason had heard 1,000 times, but it hit different now, layered with the knowledge that his son was genuinely happy in a way he hadn't been since before his mother left. That Vanessa had become part of their small family without either Mason or Charlie quite noticing when it happened. The media attention never fully disappeared, but it evolved. The initial frenzy of speculation gave way to occasional paparazzi photos and periodic articles analyzing Vanessa's surprisingly normal relationship. Mason learned to recognize the photographers who showed up at the park on Sundays. Some were respectful, keeping their distance. Others weren't. He learned which ones to ignore and which ones required calling security. Charlie, for his part, adapted with the resilience of someone who'd already survived bigger disruptions than cameras. He asked questions. Why were people taking pictures? Why did they care who Vanessa was? Why couldn't they just leave everyone alone? And Mason answered honestly. Because some people thought other people's lives were entertainment. Because Vanessa had built something important, and that made her interesting to strangers. Because the world wasn't always fair or private or kind. "That's stupid," Charlie had declared. "Yeah, buddy, it really is." But it wasn't all photographers and invasive questions. There were good moments too, great moments. The kind that made the complicated parts worth navigating. There was the night Vanessa's penthouse flooded because of a burst pipe 3 floors up, and she'd shown up at Mason's door at 11 p.m. with a suitcase and an expression somewhere between exhausted and hysterical. "My entire ceiling is raining," she'd said. "Actual rain. Inside my living room." "That's terrible," Mason had replied, trying not to smile. "It's a disaster. Everything's ruined. The restoration company says it'll take weeks to fix." "You could stay here." "Mason, I can't impose for weeks." "Why not? We've got a couch. Charlie loves having you around. It'll be like an extended sleepover." She'd stayed for 3 weeks. In that time, Mason learned that Vanessa was a disaster in the morning before coffee, that she organized his bookshelves by color when she was stressed, that she and Charlie had developed an elaborate system of inside jokes about erosion patterns and duck politics. He learned that having another adult around to help with homework and dishes and the general chaos of single parenthood was both wonderful and terrifying because he could get used to it so easily. When her place was finally habitable again, she'd moved back with obvious reluctance. "This is going to sound insane," she'd said, standing in Mason's apartment with her packed suitcase. "But I'm going to miss your water pressure that only works when you're not running the dishwasher. You can visit our terrible water pressure anytime." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She'd kissed him like he'd offered her something more valuable than a 14-room penthouse with a working ceiling. Maybe he had. There was the July afternoon when Charlie's school called to say he'd gotten into a fight defending another kid from bullies. Mason had left work early, expecting the worst, and found Charlie in the principal's office with a split lip and absolutely zero remorse. He was making fun of Tommy for having 2 dads, Charlie had explained. "I told him that was bigoted. He didn't know what bigoted meant, so I explained it. Then he pushed Tommy, so I pushed him back." The principal had looked at Mason with the expression of someone who'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. But then Vanessa had arrived. Mason had called her without thinking, the same way he'd called Derek or any family member, and she'd walked into that office in a business suit worth more than the school's annual budget and calmly explained the legal definition of discrimination and the school's obligation to protect all students and the consequences of not taking bullying seriously. Charlie hadn't been suspended. The other kid had. On the drive home, Charlie had been quiet until, "Vanessa, are you my family now?" Mason's hands had tightened on the steering wheel. They'd never discussed labels, never defined what Vanessa was to Charlie beyond dad's girlfriend and friend who knows about dinosaurs. Vanessa had turned in her seat to look at Charlie directly. Do you want me to be? Yeah, I think so, if that's okay. That's very okay with me. Cool. Charlie had gone back to playing his handheld game like he hadn't just rearranged their entire family structure with 6 words. Mason had caught Vanessa's eye. She'd been crying silently, tears streaming down her face while she smiled. There was the August morning when Mason's ex-wife called for the first time in 2 years. He'd been making breakfast while Vanessa and Charlie built an elaborate Lego structure on the living room floor. The name on the screen had sent ice through his veins. I need to take this, he'd said. He'd stepped into the hallway, closed the door, and answered. What do you want, Lauren? I heard you're seeing someone. That CEO. Vanessa something. Hayless. And yeah, I am. Why? I want to see Charlie. The words had landed like a physical blow. You haven't wanted to see him in 2 years. I know. I made mistakes, Mason. I'm better now. I have my life together. I want to be part of his. You don't get to walk back in after abandoning him. I'm his mother. You were his mother. You gave that up when you walked out. The conversation had deteriorated from there. Lauren wanted visitation. Mason refused. She threatened lawyers. He'd hung up shaking. When he went back inside, Vanessa took one look at his face and sent Charlie to his room to find a specific Lego piece that definitely didn't exist. Then she'd pulled Mason onto the couch and let him fall apart. She wants to see him, he'd said into her shoulder. After everything she put him through, after making him think he wasn't enough, she wants back in. What are you going to do? I don't know. She has legal rights. If she pushes it, then you fight. And you don't fight alone. Vanessa had pulled back to look at him. I'll get you the best family lawyer in the state. We'll protect him, together. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because he's yours and you're... She'd stopped, reconsidered. You're mine. Both of you. So we handle this together. They'd handled it together. Vanessa had connected Mason with a lawyer who'd made Lauren's attorney look like a first-year law student. The custody arrangement held. Lauren got supervised visitation once a month, which Charlie had endured with the patience of someone much older than 7. She's different than I remember, he'd told Mason after the first visit. How so? Sadder. She kept apologizing. How did that make you feel? Charlie had thought about it. I don't know. Confused, maybe. But also, I have you and Vanessa now, so it's okay if she's sad somewhere else. Kids had a way of cutting through complexity to find the truth underneath. September brought Charlie's 8th birthday and a party at the park that Vanessa had insisted on planning. She'd rented a section, hired a paleontologist to do an interactive presentation, and somehow arranged for ice cream shaped like dinosaurs. 20 kids had shown up. 14 parents had very obviously taken pictures of Vanessa Hale serving cake to 2nd graders. Mason hadn't cared. Charlie had been radiant with happiness, and that was the only thing that mattered. The real shift happened in October. Vanessa's company was being acquired by a larger tech conglomerate in a deal worth somewhere in the billions. The exact number kept changing depending on which article Mason read. It meant months of negotiations, lawyer meetings, board approval, regulatory review. It meant Vanessa working 18-hour days and coming home exhausted to Mason's apartment because her penthouse felt too empty and his place felt like home. It meant stress and late nights and missed dinners, and Charlie asking why Vanessa looked so tired all the time. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Mason had picked up Charlie from school and come home to find Vanessa at the kitchen table surrounded by contracts, her laptop open, phone pressed to her ear. She'd been there when they left that morning. She was wearing the same clothes. Have you eaten today? Mason asked when she hung up. I had coffee. That's not food. It's fine. I just need to finish reviewing these. Vanessa, when did you last sleep? She'd looked up at him with exhausted eyes. I don't know. Sunday, maybe? That was 3 days ago. I'm aware. You're going to make yourself sick. I don't have time to be sick. This deal closes in 2 weeks, and there are 17,000 details that need... I don't care about the deal. She'd blinked at him. What? I don't care about the acquisition or the contracts or the billions of dollars. I care about you, and you're running yourself into the ground. This is my company, Mason. My life's work. I can't just... I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to take care of yourself. Eat, sleep. Remember that you're a person, not just a CEO. You don't understand the pressure. You're right, I don't. But I understand watching someone I love destroy themselves trying to be perfect for people who will never care about them as much as I do. The words had hung in the air between them. Someone I love. He hadn't meant to say it like that, hadn't planned it. But there it was, true and terrifying and impossible to take back. Vanessa had stared at him. You love me? Yeah, I really do. Even though I'm a disaster who forgets to eat and works too much and brings chaos into your very organized life. Organized is generous, but yes, even though all that. She'd started crying then, not the silent tears from the car, but actual sobbing, the kind that came from somewhere deep and exhausted. Mason had pulled her into his arms and held her while she fell apart, ignoring the contracts and the laptop and the phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Charlie had appeared in the doorway. Is Vanessa okay? She's going to be, Mason had said. She just needs a break. From work? From everything. Charlie had walked over and very seriously taken Vanessa's hand. You should rest. Dad says rest is important for brain function. Also, we're having spaghetti for dinner, and you make it better than Dad does. Despite everything, Vanessa had laughed. That's a low bar. It's true, though, Mason had agreed. She'd stayed. Closed the laptop, silenced her phone, and stayed. They'd made spaghetti together, Vanessa and Charlie handling the sauce while Mason boiled pasta and only slightly burned the garlic bread. They'd eaten at the too small table and watched a documentary about marine reptiles that Charlie had been saving for a special occasion. When Charlie went to bed, Vanessa and Mason had stayed on the couch. I love you too, she'd said quietly. In case that wasn't obvious. It was a little obvious. I'm terrible at this. At relationships, at letting people in, at admitting I need help. You're not terrible. You're just learning. I don't want to mess this up. Then stop trying to be perfect. Just be here. Be you. That's enough. She'd looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What if being me isn't enough for the company? What if I sell and everyone who trusted me thinks I gave up? Is that what you think you're doing? I don't know. Maybe. The acquiring company wants to keep me on as an advisor, but not CEO. They want someone with more experience in scaling. Someone who... She'd stopped. Someone who isn't me. How do you feel about that? Relieved, which makes me feel guilty. I built this company from nothing. It's been my entire adult life, and I'm relieved to give it up. That doesn't make you a failure. That makes you human. But what if... Vanessa, look at me. Mason had waited until she met his eyes. You built something incredible. You changed an entire industry. You made billions of dollars and employed thousands of people and created technology that actually helps people. You did that. No one can take that away from you. And if you're ready for the next chapter, whatever that looks like, that's okay too. What if the next chapter is just this? Smaller, quieter, less impressive. This isn't small. This is Charlie's science projects and Sunday mornings and being part of something real instead of managing quarterly earnings. If that's what you want, it's not settling, it's choosing. I want this, she'd whispered. I want you and Charlie and terrible water pressure and dinosaur pancakes. I want to go to sleep at a reasonable hour and wake up next to someone who actually cares if I ate breakfast. I want normal. Normal is overrated, but we've got a pretty good version of it here. The deal had closed 3 weeks later. Vanessa walked away with enough money that her accountants probably needed accountants, and a title of senior advisor that required approximately 10 hours of work per month. She'd cried when she signed the papers, but they'd been good tears, the kind that came from closing one door and opening another. She'd moved into Mason's apartment officially in November. They didn't make a big announcement, didn't change relationship status on social media, just quietly merged their lives until one day, Mason realized all of Vanessa's important things were there, and her penthouse was mostly empty except for furniture. I should probably sell that place, she'd said, looking around Mason's cramped living room. It's just sitting there costing money. You love that place. I love the idea of that place. The reality was always too big and too empty. She'd pulled him onto the couch beside her. This is better. This is full.
Charlie's opinion on the living arrangement had been characteristically direct. Does this mean Vanessa's my mom now? Mason and Vanessa had exchanged glances. Do you want her to be? Mason had asked carefully.
Yeah, but also, no. I mean,
Charlie had struggled for words. I have a mom already. She's just not very good at it. But Vanessa's here and she helps with homework and remembers to pack my lunch with the good snacks and she knows about dinosaurs. So maybe she could be like a bonus parent? I like bonus parent, Vanessa had said, her voice thick with emotion. Me too, Charlie had agreed. Can we still have spaghetti on Wednesdays? Absolutely. Then it's fine.
kids really did have a way of making the complicated simple. Winter came early that year, blanketing Chicago in snow by Thanksgiving. Mason's apartment was objectively too small for 3 people, but somehow they made it work. Charlie got the bedroom. Mason and Vanessa shared the pull-out couch that was murder on Mason's back, but he'd never admit it because waking up next to her was worth the chiropractor bills. They started looking at houses in January. Nothing fancy, just a place with enough space for Charlie to have his own room and Mason and Vanessa to have theirs, and maybe an office where Vanessa could work without taking over the kitchen table. They found one in March, a 3-bedroom in a neighborhood with good schools and a park 2 blocks away, and a backyard just big enough for Charlie's erosion experiments. The realtor had been confused about whose name to put on the mortgage.
Both, Vanessa had said. Joint ownership? Is that a problem? No, just usually couples discuss this first. We're discussing it now, Mason had said. Both names.
They'd moved in April. Charlie had picked his room immediately, the one with the window overlooking the backyard, and proclaimed it perfect for watching birds. Vanessa had claimed the smallest bedroom as her office. Mason got the master by default and immediately felt weird about it until Vanessa pointed out they'd be sharing it anyway, so his martyrdom was pointless. The house had good bones but needed work. The kitchen faucet leaked, the back door stuck. The heating system made concerning noises. None of it was unfixable. All of it felt like home in a way Mason's apartment never quite had. They hosted their first dinner in May. Derek and his girlfriend, plus Charlie's friend Ethan and his parents. It was chaotic and loud, and someone spilled wine on the new rug, and Charlie gave an impromptu presentation on Jurassic predator-prey relationships that lasted 20 minutes. It was perfect. The proposal happened in June. Mason had been planning it for weeks, driving himself crazy with details. He'd picked a ring, simple, elegant, nothing too flashy because Vanessa didn't do flashy despite being able to afford whatever she wanted. He'd asked Charlie's permission, which had resulted in a very serious conversation about family structures and commitment and whether this meant they'd have to move again. We just got here, Charlie had pointed out. We're not moving. I'm just making it official. Official how? By asking Vanessa to marry me. Charlie had considered this. Will she say yes? I hope so. She will. She looks at you the same way you look at spaghetti when you're really hungry. Mason had laughed despite his nerves. That's either really romantic or really weird. Both. Can I help with the proposal? So Charlie had helped. They'd gone back to Harlow's Bistro on a Friday night, the restaurant where everything had started. Mason had requested the same corner booth. The same waiter had served them, though he probably didn't remember 2 unremarkable people from over a year ago. Vanessa had noticed immediately. This is where we had our first date. Technically, our blind date. Technically, you almost didn't show up. But I did? You did. She'd smiled at him across the table. Best decision you ever made? Top 3, definitely. Only top 3? Having Charlie is number 1. Letting you push him on that swing is number 2. This is a solid 3rd. They'd ordered the same meals they'd had that first night, made the same small talk, but everything felt different now, weighted with history and inside jokes and the comfortable knowledge of having seen each other at their worst and choosing to stay anyway. When dessert came, Charlie appeared at their table. Vanessa had looked up in surprise. Charlie, what are you doing here? I'm part of the plan. He'd been wearing his nice shirt, the one he saved for school presentations, and carrying a small box. Mason's heart had been pounding so hard he could hear it. Charlie's going to help me ask you something. Ask me what? Charlie had opened the box to reveal the ring. Dad wants to know if you'll marry us. Both of us. Me and him. As a family.
Vanessa's hands had gone to her mouth. You, what?
Mason had taken the box from Charlie and dropped to one knee beside the booth, which was uncomfortable and probably looked ridiculous, but he'd committed to the moment. Vanessa Hale, you ran 6 blocks in heels to meet me. You learned to make dinosaur-shaped pancakes. You reorganized my books by color and defended my kid at school and chose a life with us over a penthouse and quarterly earnings. You make me want to be braver than I am. You make Charlie laugh. You make our weird little family feel complete. So yeah, will you marry us? Mom, She'd been crying, makeup running, hands shaking. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Charlie had cheered. The nearby tables had applauded. The waiter had brought champagne on the house. Mason had slipped the ring on Vanessa's finger and kissed her while their son made exaggerated gagging noises, and everyone pretended not to watch. It wasn't a story from a movie. It was messy and public and probably broke several restaurant etiquette rules. It was perfect. They got married in September, exactly 2 years after their first date. Small ceremony, just close friends and family in the backyard of their house. Charlie had been the ring bearer and taken his duties extremely seriously. Derek had cried more than anyone. Vanessa had worn a simple dress and looked more beautiful than any magazine cover. They'd written their own vows. Mason's had included a promise to always have bread for the ducks. Vanessa's had included a commitment to never again go 3 days without sleeping. The reception had been pizza and beer in their too small backyard with dinosaur decorations because Charlie had insisted and Vanessa had agreed. They danced to an acoustic version of some song Mason couldn't remember because he'd been too focused on the woman in his arms. We did it, Vanessa had whispered. We really did. I almost didn't come that first night, you know. I almost chickened out. I almost drove away. But we didn't. No, we didn't. Best decision I ever made, Vanessa had said. Top 3? Number 1. Always number 1. 3 years later, their house had become fuller. Not with more people. Charlie was still an only child by choice, happy with his dinosaur collection and his erosion experiments and his 2 parents who actually showed up. Full in other ways. Full of noise and laughter and the comfortable chaos of a life actually being lived. Vanessa still advised for her old company, but mostly spent her time on smaller projects that excited her without consuming her. She'd started mentoring young women in tech, teaching them what she'd learned about building companies and protecting themselves and knowing when to walk away. She was happier than Mason had ever seen her. Mason had gotten a promotion at work, though he still drove the same Civic because it ran fine, and Charlie was sentimentally attached to it. He'd learned that being enough for one person could actually mean being enough, period. That he didn't need to apologize for his life being smaller than other people's, as long as it was full of things that mattered. Charlie was 10 now, still brilliant and still correcting his teachers and still feeding ducks every Sunday, even though he was probably too old for it. He'd made peace with his biological mother existing on the periphery of his life, visiting occasionally but never central. He called Vanessa V most of the time, Mom sometimes when he forgot to think about it, and seemed unbothered by the technicalities of their relationship. They still went to Mel's Diner on Friday nights when they could, still made dinosaur pancakes on Sunday mornings, still walked to the park where Gerald the duck, or possibly his descendants, still showed up expecting bread. They'd kept their tradition of returning to Harlow's Bistro once a year, sitting in the same booth where everything had started. It was their anniversary ritual, expensive and unnecessary and exactly right. On their 3rd anniversary, sitting in that familiar booth, Vanessa had asked the question she always asked. Did you almost leave that first night? Mason had given his usual answer. Yeah, but you showed up anyway. Always, Vanessa had said, I'll always show up. And she had. Through photographers and custody battles and exhaustion and fear and all the ordinary disasters that came with building a life together. She'd shown up for dinosaur projects and school pickups and quiet evenings when nothing happened except being together. She'd chosen them, over and over, the same way Mason had chosen her. Their story wasn't the fairy tale version where everything worked perfectly. It was messier than that, more real. They fought sometimes, about whose turn it was to do dishes or whether Charlie was old enough for a particular movie or how to handle Vanessa's impossible schedule during product launches. They had bad days and stressful weeks, and moments when the pressure of their very different worlds colliding felt like too much. But they also had Sunday mornings, and inside jokes, and a kid who felt safe enough to be himself. They had a house that was theirs, a life they'd built together, a family that made sense even when it looked strange from the outside. Sometimes late at night, when Charlie was asleep and Vanessa was reading beside him, and the house was quiet, Mason would think about that parking lot outside Harlow's, about sitting in his car, hand on the keys, seconds away from driving home, about all the ways that night could have gone differently if either of them had chosen fear over possibility. He'd almost missed this, almost missed everything because he'd been too scared to walk through a restaurant door. But Vanessa had run 6 blocks in heels because she'd refused to let him think she wouldn't show up. And Mason had stayed because something in him had recognized that the terrifying choice was also the right one. That's what love was, he'd learned. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. Not perfection, but the willingness to be imperfect together. Not finding someone who fit easily into your life, but choosing to rebuild your life until it had room for both of you. On Friday nights, they still sometimes drove past Mason's old apartment building. It looked smaller now, worn around the edges, home to new families making their own memories. Mason didn't miss it, but he was grateful for it, for the life he'd built there as a single dad, figuring things out one day at a time. That person had been enough, had always been enough. He just needed someone to see it. "What are you thinking about?" Vanessa asked one night, catching him staring out the window. "Just this. Us. How close we came to not happening. But we did happen. We really did." She'd taken his hand, the one with the wedding ring that matched hers. "You know what I think about sometimes?" "What?" "That night I ran through the streets because my phone died. I was so angry at myself, so embarrassed. I thought I'd ruined everything before it even started." She smiled. "Turns out it was the best thing that could have happened. Because you saw me at my worst, messy and late and completely disaster, and you stayed anyway. You saw me almost run away and you came back anyway. We're both idiots." "Lucky idiots," Mason corrected. "The luckiest." They stood there in their house with their sleeping kid upstairs and their imperfect life spread around them. Outside, the city continued its endless noise. Inside, everything was exactly as complicated and beautiful as it needed to be. Mason had spent 6 years learning to be enough on his own, but he'd spent the last 3 learning something better. That being enough alone and being better together weren't mutually exclusive. That he could be a complete person and still leave room for someone else. That Vanessa could be brilliant and powerful and successful and still choose Sunday mornings in a too small kitchen making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. They'd both been hiding when they met. Mason in parking lots, avoiding risk. Vanessa in penthouses, avoiding connection. They'd found each other anyway. 2 people who didn't fit the world's expectations, learning to build a world where they fit perfectly. That was the thing about love, Mason had discovered. It didn't fix everything, didn't make life simple or easy or free from struggle. But it made the struggling worthwhile, made the messy parts manageable, made the ordinary moments, Friday pizza, Sunday ducks, Wednesday spaghetti, feel like exactly enough. Because sometimes enough wasn't settling. Sometimes enough was everything that mattered, stripped down to its essential truth. People who showed up, who chose each other, who built something real in a world that demanded perfection. Mason had almost driven away that first night, but Vanessa had run 6 blocks in heels, and he'd stayed. And they'd built this, imperfect and complicated and real and theirs, that was worth more than any fairy tale ending could ever be.